Nous sommes sur le campus Microsoft à Seattle. Ce programme est interprété en simultané.
We'll take you to Connecticut to see how Aetna is using Office to gain a competitive edge. We'll travel to Southern California to learn how this supermarket used Office as a solution development tool, and as a result, now rings up profits on the bottom line. And the paperless Office is here. We'll go inside Microsoft and discover how the finance department solved the
chez
business
Microsoft.
with the This and more, all in the first half of the Microsoft Business Solutions Telecast. Now, from the Executive Briefing Center, here's your host, the Senior Technical Manager for Microsoft, York Bauer.
Hello, and welcome to Microsoft's first Business Solutions Telecast. I'm York Bauer, and it's my pleasure to be your host for what we hope will be an exciting look at computing technology and how to apply that technology to solving business problems for you. We're very pleased with the turnout for today's event. We have over 25,000 people watching around the world in 66 Microsoft sites and over 600 other sites around the world in North America and in Europe. We know you've taken time out of your busy days today for our 3-hour program, so we hope we'll make it very useful for you, and we have an exciting agenda planned. We're going to start with a keynote address today from Bill Gates, where he'll describe our role in the industry, the technologies that Microsoft is developing, and how we're partnering with others in the industry to deliver to you complete solutions for solving your business problems. Then we'll take a look specifically at how to build these types of applications, focusing in on the client side, how to provide end users new types of applications using the Microsoft Office. Then we'll take a 20-minute break, and after the break we'll come back to discuss the other half of the equation, namely the server-based systems that are required to make these new types of applications happen. We'll spend some time specifically talking about how to make these systems very cost-effective and really provide the types of benefits in terms of return on investment that you're looking for. Then we'll talk, and that's how to keep the cost of administering these systems down. Today, it turns out that up to 61%, at 61% of the cost of rolling out a business solution comes in the cost of maintaining that solution over its lifetime. So we have some very exciting technologies we'll share with you then as to how to keep those costs down. And at the end of our show, we're pleased to have Steve Ballmer joining us, who's our Executive Vice President of Sales and Support, where he'll be taking your questions live on the air. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you the Chairman and CEO of Microsoft, Bill Gates.
Thanks, York. It's my pleasure to be able to address over 25,000 of you by satellite connection today. It's amazing how technology is bringing us all closer together. Someday maybe you'll just sit at your PC and click on an icon and I'll appear on your screen right there thanks to the information superhighway. In particular, I want to thank the Astra satellite people for broadcasting this in Europe. This is going to let us reach hundreds of sites over there. In fact, there's over 52 million people who could tune into our broadcast, so it's a great audience. What I wanted to frame today is Microsoft's strategy, how we see ourselves fitting into the industry and how we see it making it easy for you to build solutions around the new technologies that are advancing so quickly. Starting out, if we look back at the computer industry in 1983, only a decade ago, it had a very vertical structure. There were a number of very fine companies like IBM, DEC, HP, and NCR who offered top-to-bottom capabilities. Their instruction set, their systems, their network protocols were sold through their sales force, and you could turn to one company and get a complete solution. Well, technology started to move very, very rapidly. In particular, the cost of RAM came down so fast, the speed of the computer on a chip went up, and it meant that the way we think of using information, the way we got it down to the personal level, changed the computer industry permanently. And this meant we needed really a new structure. We needed a very large software industry We needed very high-speed innovation in every component in the system. And so it no longer made sense that a state-of-the-art solution would be built with pieces from a single company. And so today we find the computer industry is far more horizontal, where companies like Intel, AMD, and Motorola build state-of-the-art chips. And those are put into state-of-the-art systems by a number of companies, including IBM. And the system software for those systems is provided by a lot of companies, including Microsoft. Most importantly, these standard pieces can be assembled together very flexibly. If somebody comes along with a better microprocessor, that can become part of the solution. If somebody comes along with better peripherals or networking software, it can all be combined and used with the pieces you already have. And so we see customers getting an incredible benefit from this pace and the way that these companies are working together. Of course, as all discussed, it all has to be integrated somewhere. And this is why the idea of providing solutions, solution providers, a group that we're working with very closely, are playing an increasingly important role. Now, throughout this period, Microsoft has been growing very dramatically. We are the leading software company. We were really the first to focus in on the idea that software and software standards would be very important. And we have a very broad product line, whether it's setting the MS-DOS standard or the evolution of Windows or the powerful applications we're building to be very rich tools. We've been able to deliver high-volume solutions that have set standards in the marketplace. But if you look at us as just one company in this overall computer industry, you'll see that we're only the 20th largest. And with all of these large companies and with literally thousands of very small companies, we're working together very, very closely. Microsoft here, as the 20th, has all these largest companies. And the first 18 companies on this list, we are doing systems design with. We're making sure our software fits together with the things they do. For example, with IBM, making sure it ties into their mainframes and their AS400s, or works on their latest PCs, or with DEC, taking their Alpha microprocessor chip with its great performance and making sure NT ties into that. And there's just tons of examples I could give here about how partnership is what's driving great products in this industry. The investments that Microsoft is making are going broader and broader as we're seeing the capabilities that system software and applications can provide as going up as fast as the hardware is improving. I've shown here various years where we started major investments. For example, in 1987, we saw that workgroup computing with electronic mail and bulletin boards would be very, very important, and put together a group to focus on that. In 1987, we started our Access database project and decided that would be closely integrated in with our other high-end applications. In 1989, we started the NT project that I want to talk about because it's really redefining the way that we look at computer categories. What is a PC? What is a workstation? What are the limits of these systems? And it's really based on NT that networks are becoming far richer than just file sharing. The term client server is used a lot, and beneath it there's something very important going on with relational databases and rich communication systems that can re-engineer corporate applications. Most recently, we've started efforts in object-oriented operating systems, our Cairo effort, an effort to integrate in all the Office products in together with PCs, so as a document moves throughout the Office, it's always secure and editable, and you can track where it is. We're also getting very involved in the idea that not only within a company where you have high-speed networks, but throughout all companies across those boundaries and all over the world will have very high-speed data networks that now people are referring to as the digital information highway. And it raises some wonderful opportunities for sharing information, but also a challenge to software to step up to that. And so that's now a major area of investment for us. key to our strategy is, of course, Windows. Throughout the 1980s, we delivered the message about the importance of graphical interface and the kind of integration that Windows allowed applications to provide. And this commitment to Windows is a forever type commitment. We're going to evolve Windows, put new features into it, but it's always upwards compatible. Today in high volume, that means Windows 3.1, and at the high end, it means Windows NT. Windows NT was started off with some very ambitious goals. The idea was to say, hey, there's something great about PCs. They have hardware flexibility, lots of applications, but there's also great things about workstations, very rich operating systems, high performance, lots of security. Also the NetWare as a network system, Unix, mini computers, a lot of features that people had a dilemma. Seeing the Pentium and the RISC processors come along, we could provide something that was the best of all of these worlds. It had the compatibility with Unix, the compatibility with Windows, the portability to this latest hardware, that really people could have the most flexibility in Windows and yet have it run on the world's fastest computers, the most scalable approach possible. And that's why we're excited that we did ship Windows NT. Now we're going on to do even more to evolve Windows. The Windows on the desktop, we have a project called Chicago that'll bring a new level of ease of use and performance to that. And NT will evolve in its next major version into the Project Cairo, which goes even further with an object-oriented file system. So we're continually reinvesting, but in a way that makes all the work you do with Windows carry forward into that future environment. And we recognize that despite the incredible success of Windows, over 40 million copies out there, that the world will always be a very mixed environment. Not only the computers we have today, but maybe new systems that you're bringing in, running a variety of operating systems, a variety of protocols. And the ideal here is that no matter which system you're on, you can reach out to the services of all those other systems very easily. You only have to write an application once and it works with all the databases. You write a workflow system once and it works with all your different mail backends. That's the goal of the Windows Open Services Architecture, to let Windows applications reach out through standard drivers to every type of system that's out there. And we've been really amazed at the positive reception we've gotten from this, not only from customers, but also from the providers of all these systems. And so they are providing the pieces that glue Windows into their environments. And it really becomes the universal server, the universal desktop that can coexist with all of those other systems and give you the value out of those systems for your investment. Now Microsoft, in moving forward, collaborates with the industry. Our very strategy of focusing only on software has meant that we've had to be in partnership, whether it's IBM and Compaq, Intel, just a huge number of companies. Perhaps most importantly are the things we're doing with software developers and solution providers. We let them come in and see our new work before we've frozen it, get their ideas. We give them these software development kits we call SDKs. We're using CDs now, compact discs, to send out to the massive amounts of information. So even the smallest developer gets that CD, can browse in and easily find the information that they want. Another key point is that we do have a commitment to multiple platforms. We have a commitment to the Macintosh, which is the second most popular desktop environment. We have a commitment to provide things like Olay and Windows emulation in all of the popular Unix environments. And so we really are trying to unleash not just connections to these environments, but the ability to run new things in those environments as well. Now one of the big advances taking place is the move towards information centricity, away from individual applications being at the center. This is one of the things that object approaches allow for. Other people have touted the technical terms, but we've been hard at work with other developers delivering what we call Olay that allows for this integration of a single document with information of all types. In fact, you can get applications from many different companies and yet create a document that has information that those applications understand. It's a major advance, and it's taken many years for us to get the developers moving towards it, and now to get everybody to see what they can do in their custom applications. But we've had wonderful progress in the last year. We now have over 200 applications shipping using this Olay 2. Another key point about this is that the separation between applications and tools has now been eliminated. If you see that something like a spreadsheet can do a great job of presenting numerical information and charting that information, you might think, okay, when I want to do a presentation system, I'd like to use those capabilities. Well, in the past, that meant using very limited macro languages, not being able to tie it to your C development in your custom environment. By taking those applications and using the Olay approach to expose their capabilities as objects, we now make them a programming platform. So Microsoft Office can be the beginning of development solutions, and that's true for any applications that use Olay, and it's also true for any programming language that's adapted to Olay. In our case, that includes the work we're doing on the Visual Basic language, the Fox language, and the advances we're making in C that let you reach into our applications and have their full power to build very rich, customized systems. I mentioned at the beginning a very crucial point, which is that we need solution providers, that is, trained engineers who can understand your particular problems to help install and integrate and do the custom work that can give you the full capabilities of all these tools. We're working now with such an incredible variety of these companies with expertise in different areas. And in many ways, when we look at the internal experts inside a corporate development shop, we look at them in the same way. They are solution providers. They're going out to the various groups in the company using tools, providing their expertise to solve business problems. And so more and more, we've come up with custom programs to provide support, provide information to these solution providers so that all those pieces come together in the right way. It's all part of a vision that we articulated some years ago called information at your fingertips. Workers everywhere ought to be able to sit down and get information about projects, about schedules, about competition very, very easily. And it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of collaboration, but this is an incredible opportunity, not only for the industry, but for people who are using these tools to make their companies more competitive and more effective. And we look forward to working with many of you on making this come to fruition. Over the next 2.5 hours, we're going to take a look at some examples of how customers are already putting this Microsoft solution platform to work to solve their business problems. We hope this can make you more competitive, and we thank you very much for your time. And now I'll turn it back over to York.
Thanks, Bill. At Microsoft, we feel it's also very important that we be using our own technologies internally at Microsoft to help run our business. What we'd like to show you now is a brief case study where we've employed the Microsoft Solutions Platform ourselves with the help of a solution provider to solve a business problem here at Microsoft. That business problem was in our order management area. And now we'd like to show you Project Chameleon at Microsoft.
At Microsoft, we're very excited about the paperless office. My friend Nathan Myhrvold, Vice President responsible for our Advanced Technologies and Business Developments Group, likes to remind me that we're just about done communicating by smearing ink on dead trees. Well, the dead trees part is very exciting in finance because finance has always been a world of paper. We write on paper, check paper, put columns of numbers on paper. We hand paper to one another, process paper. We have systems for paper. We store paper, index paper. We have paper everywhere. So getting rid of the paper at Microsoft is a great opportunity for efficiency. And I told Nathan I can do without the ink as well. This smearing word, smearing's a little strong for what we accountants like to believe we do in finance. We're a lot more careful than that. So when I talked to Jamie Mera, our Director of Advanced Technologies, about speccing our new order management system, I said, Jamie, let's get rid of the dead trees, and I can do without the ink. But I said, keep the color for me, because there's one thing we're not going to have at Microsoft, that's red ink.
Mike Brown tasked me on this assignment to go out and basically take a look at the way the business process was taking place today, and to figure out how we could apply some of our technology and technologies from solution providers in the industry, such as GTE Vantage Solutions and Ideas Commercial Systems, to figure out how we can solve business problems.
Our order management team has had to struggle with managing the sheer volume of orders that come through the department each day. On an average month, we see 40 to 50,000 orders flow through the order management department. That equates to over 70 to 90,000 pieces of paper that have to be physically handled from person to person through the entire order management process. It's inevitable with that sheer volume, with the sheer number of 16 people touching an order, that mistakes are going to be made, paper is going to be misplaced, misfiled, mishandled, so that our ability to respond to a customer's needs, be it getting their order out quickly and as efficiently as possible and as accurately as possible, or be able to respond to any questions or inquiries that they may have, was very much limited. They would color code, mark up, verify pricing, verify shipping information and customer information, and then they would shuttle that, rush it over via truck over to the order management department, who would be on standby constantly to grab those orders, sort through them, redistribute them within their teams, and get that order back on the system as soon as possible, so that if a customer called in, they could respond. Internal to our group, we wanted to significantly reduce or eliminate paper altogether. The redundancy of handling the paper 16 times is very frustrating to a team that wants to be as efficient and effective to that customer as possible.
Chameleon on the desktop, on the client side, uses Windows for Workgroups 3.1.1 and MS-DOS 6.2 for the operating system. On the server side, Chameleon uses NT Advanced Server and SQL NT for both the operating system and database. Basically, when the user sits down, they're sitting down in front of a 21-inch monitor that is connected to a 46 PC, and they are seeing an advanced object-oriented user interface. They have all sorts of tools on the desktop, such as scan tools, faxing tools, printing tools. They will be able to take an order and scan it in, view it. They'll be able to add annotations, either voice annotations, Olay annotations, sticky notes, and overlay it directly onto the image. Workflow is probably the key component, that once they get done with an order, workflow takes it from there and everything is automated. Office really provides the environment on the application side to allow us to look at real-time data in Excel to a back-end database such as SQL NT. The relationship between GTE Vantage Solutions and Ideas Commercial Systems with Microsoft has been very good. We have worked very closely with them in a partnership with building an enterprise document management imaging system that meets our business problems and solutions, but could also meet the industry's.
Chameleon really is a perfect project for someone that's a solution provider. Microsoft provides the tools and frameworks and the underlying technology such as NT, SQL NT, all the components of the solutions platform, and we as a provider of solutions take those components, do business process reengineering, and combine them together to provide a true complete solution that solves a specific set of business problems.
With the Chameleon system, we are able to handle a 20% increase in the order volume that we're handling today with the same number of head count, and that is a significant savings to our financial operations division. Before Project Chameleon, an order would be touched by 16 people minimum in the entire order processing cycle time. Now the order is touched by 4 people electronically and routed automatically through workflow, so there is no dead time in the processing of an order. We're going to see increased turnaround to the customer. The ability to respond to that customer while they're on the phone, not having to call them back when they're making an inquiry of Microsoft, is tremendous. That benefit alone more than justifies the system, because that is the 100% world-class service that we talk about providing.
Studies have shown recently that over 75% of business process reengineering projects fail because end users are not intimately involved in the project. Here, working closely with Microsoft, we've been very careful to ensure that end users are involved in all phases of the re-engineering project from start to finish. This bottoms-up type of approach to the re-engineering virtually ensures success, and it's a key ingredient to what we're doing with Project Chameleon.
The greater benefits we've seen is the renewed enthusiasm that people have for their jobs, and the fact that they're using something that their company they work for built and designed. They watched it through its entire process. They participated in the engineering of the new workflow, and it really revitalized their interest and gives them an opportunity to show that they can make a difference.
So hopefully that shows you how Microsoft is deploying and using the Microsoft Solutions Platform technologies ourselves in our own business with the help of a solution provider. What we'd like to do now for you is take you through the specific elements of the Solutions Platform so you can get a sense for what these technologies are and how they can be specifically applied to solving business problems in your environment. So for the next part of the agenda, we're going to take a look at the client side, so the end user side of these applications, and how you can use the Microsoft Office to rapidly build and deploy these applications. And for that, I'd like to introduce Robbie Bach, Senior Product Manager for Microsoft Office. Robbie?
Thanks a lot, York. When we think about the Microsoft Office, we think of it as a whole new way to work. And we mean this in the context of where applications have developed over the past 10 years. We started with DOS applications, which were useful but a little bit more difficult to use. We then moved to the Windows environment, which were easier to use but still had some shortcomings. And with the new version of Office, we're moving to a third generation of applications, a generation we call information-centric applications. We talk about that in three areas. The first is going beyond ease of use, to move to a world where the software actually helps you get things done. And we'll talk about a technology called IntelliSense technology. The second area is beyond cut and paste, where we make integration work incredibly well between the applications, as if it were seamless. We'll talk about a technology called Olay 2.0 and how that's implemented in the Office. And third, we go beyond macros to talk about how you can use a macro language called Visual Basic for Applications to tie more than one application together into new custom solutions. And that's what we mean by the Office as a whole new way to work. Now, I talked a little bit about IntelliSense technology. And IntelliSense technology is really designed to watch what the user is doing and then intelligently produce the right results. So the idea is to take routine tasks and make them absolutely automatic, or to take more complex tasks and make them dramatically easier. The whole point here is to enable people to focus on the information they're working with and not have them have to worry so much about using the application. In terms of beyond cut and paste, we really focus on a technology called Olay 2.0. And Olay 2.0 is designed to make it so that the user doesn't have to think about which application they're using. They can just do the task in the normal way they would, and the right thing will happen with the software. And there's two key areas where we show this. The first is one called visual editing, where you actually can take an Excel spreadsheet, put it in a Word document, double-click on it, and edit the Excel spreadsheet right from within your Word document using all of Excel's tools. And we'll see that in a moment. The second is something called cross-application drag and drop. And here we take the metaphor that people are used to working on within an application, just dragging and dropping data, and apply it across the application so that people can use it from Excel to Word, for example. So now let's take a look at how these technologies are applied on the client side. And to do that, I'm going to turn it back over to York. York?
Thanks, Robbie. Now what we'd like to do in this demonstration is show you some of the technologies and features that you've heard Robbie describe, but in the context of a business problem that I'm sure many of you can appreciate. And that is, how do you take documents and data that's on legacy systems today, in particular mainframe systems, and make them more powerful, and in particular apply PC tools to them to make them more powerful. So in this demonstration, what we're going to show you is how we can take a Windows for Workgroups 3.11 machine, that's you see up here in the left-hand corner, dial into the network over a new technology we have in Windows for Workgroups called Remote Access Services, get attached in this case to a Windows NT Advanced Server running SNA server on our corporate network here at Microsoft, and attach ultimately out to an ES9000 mainframe where we have some documents stored. What we'll show you is how we can apply the Office to making those documents more powerful. So with that, let me take you through the demonstration. Now the machine I'll be using here is running Windows for Workgroups 3.11, which is the latest release of the operating system. And let me first get dialed in and attached to the network over the phone. I'm going to launch the Remote Access Services utility within Windows for Workgroups. And you can see I have a set of phone numbers that I can choose from, and I'll go ahead and dial one of those and enter my password. Now, as this is dialing in, I want to point out that once I'm attached, I will have exactly the same functionality in terms of access to the network that I would if I was locally attached over Token Ring or Ethernet. And more importantly, perhaps, I can run exactly the same applications in exactly the same way as if I was sitting on my desktop. So this is a very ideal technology for someone that is a traveling executive, for example, perhaps a service or sales representative in the field, someone that needs to be out at a manufacturing site, in a hotel room, at a customer site, and has exactly the same access now as they would if they were sitting at their desk. Also, for those of you internationally, this works not only over standard phone lines, but also over X.25 and ISDN connections. And as you can see, we're back here connected. We're verifying ourselves onto the network. And as you can see, we're completing the attachment. And what I'm going to do is to start an application now as I would if I was sitting at my desk. And this is a mainframe emulation product, a 3270 product. This, in this case, is the Rumba 3270 emulation product for Windows from Wall Data Corporation. It's exactly the same product that I'd be using on my desktop if I was locally attached. And as you'll see here in just a moment, we'll attach to the mainframe system, and I'll log on and show you one of the documents that we have on the mainframe that we want to manipulate. I'll maximize this for you so you can see what's happening. As you can see, we're at our logon banner. I'll now execute a macro which will log us onto the system and get us to a list of files on the mainframe. Now clearly this is a feature that's common with many emulation products in Windows that allow for the automation of routine tasks on these legacy systems. So as we're brought up to the list of files now, I'll focus your attention on the second one. It's a report that's been generated on the mainframe. I'll move into the mainframe text editor here and take a look at it. I'll move it up a little bit so you can see it. And as I'm sure all of you can appreciate that have worked on these kinds of systems, the tools that are available for manipulating a document like this are not that ideal, especially when it comes to making a powerful document. For example, you'll notice that the trademark symbol here is simply the letters TM in parentheses. The bullets are simply asterisks. We want to make this a much more powerful document. So let me show that to you. I'll back out of the text editor here on the mainframe, and we'll go ahead and log off. And I'll show you how we can now draw this document down automatically from the mainframe into Microsoft Word and then use the desktop tools to manipulate it. So we're back at the logon banner. I'm now going to bring up Microsoft Word, and as I do that, I'll point out the Microsoft Office Manager that you see in the upper right. With this tool now, I can have instant access to all of the applications in the Microsoft Office family. So let me bring up Word, and I'll show you a new option that we've added in the menu in this case with the help of Wall Data, which allows us to pull up host files. There's an option here for Open Host File that launches a macro in the product, which will log us onto the mainframe, and you'll see that taking place now in the lower right, and present to us that same list of files in a friendly Windows dialog. So the key benefit here for an end user is that now with the sophistication of the Office and the automation capabilities, they don't need to know or care where the mainframe is or even that it exists, or most of all, how to log on to it and deal with it. So that's a very powerful construct. Now you can see back on the screen that we have the list of files. I'm going to select that same report that you saw me use earlier on the mainframe. I'll select OK, and what's being done for me now is that that file is being automatically downloaded for me by Word from the host. And by the way, what's being used here is a standard interface in Windows called Jalopy for dealing with IBM mainframe and mini-based systems. Now you'll see in just a moment as the download completes, I'll be asked whether I want to open the document. And we should see that happening here in just a moment. I'll select OK. And what you'll also notice is that we not only open the document, but if you look at the lower right, you see we're also logged off from the mainframe, which helps to reduce connect time and therefore cost. So now I have, as you can see, I'll maximize this, exactly the same document locally as I had on the mainframe. Now let me apply some of the technology that you heard Robbie describe, in particular the IntelliSense technology. I'm going to automatically format this document using the auto format capabilities in Word. I'll select auto format, and when I click OK here, you'll notice that Word has automatically formatted the document for me. I can even go into a style gallery now and choose from a list of styles. In this case, I'm going to choose Memo 2. It's a style that I happen to like. I'm allowed to preview that. And that looks good to me, so I'll select OK. and accept the changes. So as you can see, with essentially one step now, I've taken a very simplistic document and turned it into a very good looking and powerful one. Now here's another feature within the new Office that fits in the IntelliSense category, and that's something we call auto text. So for example, if you look at the screen again, I can simply type the word logo here, and by simply selecting the auto text function here, I can automatically insert our company's logo into this document. So it makes it very easy for me now to store those kinds of things. Now let me scroll down in this document and show you one other particular area, and that's this table. This table came from the mainframe, and as you can see, it's a very rudimentary table. We want to manipulate this data and make it a little bit more powerful. So to do that, I'm going to bring up another Microsoft Office application. That's Excel 5.0 that you see on the bottom of the screen. And what I'd like to do is to take this chart or this table of data and move it into Excel to manipulate it. Now in the past, that would have been a cutting and pasting type of operation. But with OLE 2.0 now, I can simply drag and drop it. Watch carefully. I'll select the table, and with my mouse, simply drag it down into Excel. And now I'll shift back to Excel. I'll maximize, and now I'm ready to manipulate the data in Excel. So for example, I may want to provide summing and totals for this data. So I'll simply select the table. I'll select the auto summing capability, and I now have sums for each of those columns. In addition, I may want to format this table. So I can use a formatting function similar to the one you just saw me use in Word. I select auto format, I simply choose a style, and the table's formatted for me automatically. Now one of the powerful things, of course, within Excel is the ability to generate graphs and to represent this information graphically, which for an end user or viewer of the document is, of course, much more powerful. So let me show you that briefly. I'll select a few columns here of the chart. I'll select the default charting tool, and I can simply draw where I want the graph, and the graph is drawn for me. Now, one of the things that I'm sure you all can appreciate is that there comes a time generally with these kinds of this kind of data where something needs to be added. And what we found in research with customers and end users is that it was a common problem to add data to an existing chart. So what we've done is provide a very easy way to do that, and I'll show that to you now. You'll notice that I selected only the first two columns, or excuse me, columns of this chart. I'm going to now select the last column and simply drag it on with a feature called drag and plot. I'll drag it onto the graph, and you'll see that it's added automatically. Now, let me make this a little bit easier for you to see. I'm going to rotate this graph so you can see it a little bit better. Now the graph's completed, so very easy for me to do. Now what I'd like to do is move this data back up into the report that we've generated. So to do that, I'll use the drag and drop functionality again. I'll simply select the table or the chart with my mouse, and I'll drag it up back into the Word document. And as you can see, it's added back for me. I can, of course, do the same thing with the table. Simply select the table, grab it with the mouse, and drag it back to my document. So hopefully this is showing you some of the power and ease of use that these new features have provided. I want to show you one final thing, and that's an example of visual editing as you heard Robbie describe. What I'll do now is maximize the Word document and focus your attention on the table that we've created. Now you'll notice that I forgot to put the word total here at the bottom, but with visual editing, it becomes very easy for me to add that. Watch as I double click, and you'll notice that the menu options and the menu bar and toolbar simply change, and I now have the functionality of Excel. So for example, I can come here into this cell and type in the word total. And now when I click outside back onto the Word document, I'm returned into the functionality for Microsoft Word. So hopefully that shows you the kind of power that's available now within the Microsoft Office for manipulating these kinds of data and documents in a powerful way that helps you use what you already have in place on your legacy systems. And with that, I'll take it back to Robbie.
Thanks a lot, York, for that demonstration. As you can see from the demonstration, we've talked a little bit about the Office. Now what I'd like to do is drill down a little bit into the integration area. And really where that begins is with consistency. Basically the idea is that as people work with multiple applications, their work with each application should take place in the same way. So here you can see an example of the top menus from each of our applications: Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Project. And as you can see, all the menu items are exactly the same except for one: Data, Draw, Table. That's where the specifics for each of the application are housed. Everything else works exactly the same way across all of the applications. The idea is as people work with multiple applications and move data back and forth, it's a seamless process, and they don't have to worry so much about which application they're in. In addition, let's talk a little bit about that technology, object linking and embedding, that I talked about before. We've already seen how it enhances productivity for the in place and really have an environment that's very simple and straightforward. But in addition, object linking and embedding enhances development and speeds development because it provides a set of reusable objects that people can use to tie together and make great applications. And we'll see in a moment how we can make that happen. Finally, it's important to note that OLE, or object linking and embedding, has a lot of third-party support in the industry. Over 100 third parties are developing for the application, and it's recently won major awards from PC Computing and PC Magazine. This is a key development platform for people to build custom solutions. Let's see a quick example of OLE 2.0 in action. I'm going to turn that back over to York.
Thanks, Robbie. Now, in this demonstration, what we're going to do is take a look at building an application using these reusable OLE 2.0 components as Robbie described. This particular example is an application that might be used by an insurance claims adjuster. It needs to go out to take down some information from a customer about the scene of an accident. And that includes both information that Excel is very good at, namely text and numeric information, but also a drawing that needs to be taken. And that particular component will be served by a third-party application, in this case, Visio from Shapeware, which is a third-party drawing package. And you'll see how easily these two different applications can come together to form a customized solution. And I'll have Brett show that to you now. Brett?
Thank you, York. We'll be running this demonstration today on a Windows for Workgroups 3.11 workstation. Liberty Insurance now has a custom application that they're using to enter in information about this accident. Essentially, two areas of information we're going to enter. I'm going to take you through now how we're going to enter this information in this custom solution for our claims adjuster. So let's go ahead and take a look at the screen here. Now, I'm not sure if many of you noticed or not, York looked rather composed this morning, but unfortunately he was in an accident. The name that we're going to go ahead here and enter is York. Now, what I can do once I have the name in here is search a database that looks up York's name and gets his additional policy information. I'll be showing you in an example later on how we can easily go out through Microsoft Office application and get this type of data and easily bring it into Excel. Now we can also enter in additional information about weather conditions, for instance, what the accident, information like the roadway and the time of day, so on and so forth. What we need to do now, though, is to be able to diagram this accident. Now, traditionally, this would have taken a developer literally man-years to develop this type of functionality within a custom solution. But now I can easily do that. For just a couple of $100s, I can get a shrink-wrap application, and this is going to be Visio in this case, where I can incorporate those graphics very easily within my custom solution. So let's go ahead and then take a look now how I'm going to diagram this accident. Now, because this is an OLE 2 object, all I need to do is simply double-click on the object. If you look closely at the menu bar and the toolbar across the top of your screen, you'll see that we're going to be going into Visio. Again, because Visio supports OLE 2, we're able to get this type of functionality. And what I'll do is bring up some accident tools here to help me diagram the accident. And what I'll do is begin diagramming the accident. What we'll first do is put the car in the roadway, just around right about here. Say it was heading due west. We can also diagram the direction this car was heading. Now we'll pick up the car that York was driving, which is down here in the lower left-hand part of your screen, and we'll move that up onto the roadway as well. And we'll say that the car was heading, say, due south here. York drives a yellow car, so we can easily color that. Okay. Now, as York was traveling south, unfortunately, he failed to see a stop sign that was in the roadway. What we'll do is we'll move the stop sign then onto the diagram. And what that then resulted in, unfortunately, here today, is the accident or the collision that occurred. So very quickly and very easily, I'm able to develop these types of graphics within my custom solution. Let me go ahead now and move back to Excel, and I'll show you how easy that is. We'll go over here and we'll click away. And just like that, we're now back into Excel. Now, traditionally, again, this would have taken me a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of effort as a developer within an organization to be able to put in these types of complex graphics. But now, because I have this OLE 2 object from Visio, it's very easy for me. In fact, I also have available to me a number of OLE 2 objects. And as Robbie mentioned earlier today, there's over 100 objects that are either currently in development or shipping at this time that provide me with a lot of functionality that I can immediately incorporate into a custom solution. In fact, it's very easy for me to insert these objects as well. I can just take you through that really quick. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at your screens here. Under the Insert pull down, I can go to Insert Object. What you see here is a list then of the objects that are presented for me. So there's things like media and sound clips I can incorporate. I can incorporate graphics. I can incorporate PowerPoint slides, word processing, also some image objects we're actually going to see in a demonstration later on. So not only applications from the Microsoft Office, but a number of third-party applications as well. So with that, hopefully we are able to show you here how important it is to be able to incorporate this type of information very easily and quickly as you develop custom solutions. With that, let's throw it back to Robbie. Robbie?
Now what I'd like to do is talk about that third beyond point that I mentioned earlier, going beyond macros, and talk a little bit about how Visual Basic for Applications, which is now being included in all of Microsoft's applications, enables people to work with a macro language and combine applications into entire new custom systems. The first thing to note about Visual Basic for Applications it is a common language. So it will be shared across all of our applications, in addition to being shared with Visual Basic itself. This makes it dramatically easier for developers to get up to speed, learn it in one application, and then use it in other applications. In addition, Visual Basic for Applications is cross-platform. So if you have an environment in which you're mixing Macintoshes, Windows, and Windows NT platforms on the client, you can write the application once in Visual Basic for Applications and then apply it across all of those platforms without rewriting any code. Finally, and in some ways most importantly, Visual Basic for Applications dramatically speeds development. Because we reuse your knowledge in Visual Basic and the object set from OLE 2.0, people can create applications dramatically faster and reduce the backlog by as much as 50 or 60% in your organization. So with that, let's take a look at a Visual Basic for Applications example and see how this technology can be put to work.
What we'd like to do in this demonstration now is show you the ease of porting code between Visual Basic and members of the Office family that support Visual Basic for Applications. In this particular example, we're going to start off with a Visual Basic application that's been written to access data that's coming from an APPC server application. Then what we'll show you is how you can move that code over into Microsoft Excel's Visual Basic for Applications development environment. And then finally, when that's complete, access the same information from that APPC server application. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brett for the demonstration.
For this demonstration, we'll be running on a Windows for Workgroups 3.11 workstation again. We're also going to be using Wall Data's APPC engine. This allows us direct access via APPC on any Windows platform. And in this demonstration, what we're going to be first doing, we're going to be running a Visual Basic client application which will start a server application and begin issuing transaction calls. So let's go ahead and take a look at this demonstration. As you see on your screen here, we have a Visual Basic client. When I hit the Start button, you should see two things happen. We'll start the server application, and those transactions will begin being issued to the server. Go ahead and hit the Start button. Watch the right-hand side of your screen as you see the server pop up. You see the data being now initiated through the transaction. Now, although this is a simplistic application, note that the server could exist on any IBM platform, including an IBM 3090 or a mainframe-style platform, a Mini, or even an RS 6000-based system. So what we're going to do now is, with this data, now that we get this data within our client, what I'd like to be able to do is graph it. So what I'd like to be able to do then is move over to Excel 5.0, which is excellent for that. And I need to be able to port this application easily. So let's go ahead and look at the code within Visual Basic. And we'll move this application then over to Microsoft Excel. What we'll do first is bring up the Visual Basic development environment. For those of you not familiar with this, this is the Visual Basic development environment. And this is actually the form we were just using. Notice on the left side of your screen, you have a number of tools you can use to place on the form or the user interface portion of your application. For instance, I can move up here to where the button tool is, click on it, move to our form, and easily drag an area on the form for that button. So it's very simple and easy. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the code behind this application. There are essentially two areas of this application. One are the declarations, which tells Visual Basic about Wall Data's APPC libraries. The other area is approximately 2 pages of code which it sits behind the Start button, which runs the application. Let's go ahead and take a look then at the code behind the Start button. You might notice in a couple of areas here, for instance, the conversation being started. We're issuing a request for data. And lower in the bottom part of the application, then we're receiving that data. So very simple application. Let's go ahead now and move this application to Microsoft Excel. To do that, I'll bring up a fresh copy of Excel. I'll use the Microsoft Office Manager here, which allows me to get at applications within the Microsoft Office very easily. And as you see on your screens, we're bringing up Microsoft Excel 5.0. And what I'll do next is move into Excel's development environment. To do that, follow me as I move to the bottom left-hand side of the screen. Choose my right mouse button, and I'll insert a module, very similar to Visual Basic. And you might also notice then, now that we're inside of this development environment, there's also some buttons. The toolbar here also looks very similar to the Visual Basic environment. Now let's go ahead and move that application over to this environment now. What we'll do is we'll minimize Excel, we'll bring back up Visual Basic, and let's copy the declarations first. We'll go ahead and select this text, and we'll copy it up to the clipboard. Now let's move back over to Excel and paste it. You might notice that we've done some automatic syntax checking here. Let's go ahead and grab then the 2 pages of code that sat behind our Start button. Do that, we'll move over to the Start button. Now we have this text, we'll then copy it. We'll minimize, go back over to Excel, and paste the rest of this code. Okay, now these two development environments are so similar. I only need just a minor modification to the code in order to be able to display the data within cells now. So watch as I just go ahead and here and uncomment one of the lines of code that we have. Obviously here it says cells. In other words, we're going to be putting the data within a cell-oriented presentation. We'll comment out the line then that is for Visual Basic, and it's just that easy. Now, let's create the user interface portion of this application. To do that, let's move back over to the spreadsheet. What I'll do is I'll bring up a Forms toolbar. Notice that this toolbar here, it's on the right-hand side of your screen, looks very similar to that of Visual Basic. In fact, we'll pick up the same button tool that we saw over in Visual Basic. We'll click here. We'll drag an area of our screen. And now we're asked to associate the function or the code that we just pasted within our development environment and associate that with this button. We can do that easily here. We'll go ahead and name this button Start, as we had over in Visual Basic. What we'll do here is make where the data is going to be presented within Excel a little bit larger. To do that, I'll bring up the Formatting toolbar. I'll go ahead and make this 24 point and bold. Now we'll be able to see this data a little bit easier. Now we've moved this application over to Excel. What we should expect to see when we hit the Start button is the same server application start, and the same data that used to go into Visual Basic now is going to be brought into Microsoft Excel. Let's go ahead and take a look there. Let's go ahead and hit the Start button. Server application is starting, and the same data now is being moved into Excel. Now, you might be asking yourself why this is relevant, or why would I want to be able to move this type of code over to Excel? Well, in this particular case, Excel offers a tremendous amount of data manipulation tools for me. Now that I have this data within Excel, I can easily graph it. In fact, within the Microsoft Office, I have tremendous flexibility in taking code from one environment, say within Word or Excel or Microsoft Access, and also moving that code around. I'm able to leverage the skills I have in understanding and knowing the basic language, which is now part of the Microsoft Office. Let's go ahead and take a look now as I go ahead and graph this data. What we'll do is we'll select the data, and this time we'll choose a chart wizard, which allows me to select the style and type of chart that I want. We'll select 3D column, and we'll stick the style that we like. And there we have it. Now when I click the Start button, we now represent this data in the way that we'd like to see it. So hopefully this underscores the importance of being able to port application code between applications within the Microsoft Office. And we've been able to do that very easily. I'm able to not only leverage the skills that I have, but it's also translates to a tremendous cost savings, and that I can reuse code where I need to. So with that, let's go ahead and throw that back to Robbie. Robbie?
Okay, so now we've seen all of the major technologies that I mentioned when we got started. What I'd like to do now is actually look at how a customer, Aetna Insurance, a major North American insurance company, has taken these technologies and applied it in their business and achieved dramatic benefits that help them be more competitive. So let's take a look at that Aetna video right now.
Aetna is one of the world's largest insurance and financial services company. We principally operate in the United States, but we have businesses all around the globe. Microsoft Office, or really the suite of Microsoft products, if you wish, are the foundation of our information technology strategy, which is to create a consistent electronic information delivery environment. And that starts at the desktop, where we need to have a high degree of consistency so that the people that have to use the technology get used to one way of doing things and can focus in on using their applications as opposed to about worrying about the technical complexities of the underlying technology. And Microsoft has just done that in a wonderful way of creating a level of consistency between Windows and the remaining tool sets. We obviously are doing a lot in all the different businesses. As an example, one of the major challenges that we have is to effectively manage our real estate investment.
The mortgage loan professionals in the mortgage finance area, the investment managers, were spending a lot of time getting information from our mainframe environment, our VAX environment, our PC LAN environment, gathering this information that came to them in forms of reports, paper in some cases, different vehicles, but they took this information, they would key it into a Word document or key it into some working document that their administrative assistant would eventually put into a Word document. But it was a very labor-intensive effort. It took us about 3 months to do it, and between 2 and 3 people. The front end is a Word basic macro that allows the user, and the user in this case is administrative assistant, to just get in a situation where they can point and click on the document they want to produce. And based on that selection, behind the scenes, we take advantage of Q&E going against our SQL Server database, and Q&E and will populate an Excel spreadsheet, and also behind the scenes, and this is all controlled by this Word basic macro, the Excel spreadsheet will eventually populate the Word document. We're saving a couple hours per document, and that couple hours is being saved by the high-level professional who can spend more time doing analysis on a loan, which is their real job. That's where the bang for the buck is.
The development backlog that we have at this point is mostly in the mainframe environment. What we see integrating the desktop with some of the mainframe application that we have today is to create an easy way of getting at the information that is stored into the mainframe and in a consistent way. Again, consistently, the developer doesn't have to worry about what desktop technology we're going to be using. We all know the desktop technology is Windows. We all know that every desktop at Aetna will have Word, will have Excel. Visual Basic for application is a very important tool for our corporation because we currently have about 500 programmers which are fully trained in Visual Basic. So just by extending their skill, we'll be able to use the capability of Excel 5.0, which has now Visual Basic for application support.
You can imagine the amount of work that's involved with rolling out Windows and Office applications to thousands of workstations. We feel that what we can't provide internally, Microsoft can, and what Microsoft can't, they've cultivated a relationship with the solution provider channel. So with all of those different components that we have available to Aetna, Premier Support, Microsoft Consulting, Microsoft Education Services, Solution Provider Channel, we're able to offer our users a total solution with the support that they need to use the technology and leverage the technology over the next several years. We view this as a long-term relationship with Microsoft. We're very pleased with it, and we look forward to the future.
The flip side of the Microsoft-Aetna relationship is there's a significant benefit for Microsoft. First and foremost, it understands how large companies use their tool set. And we're just delighted with the relationship because it really has worked in both directions very, very well.
Okay, that's an interesting look at actually seeing the technology applied in the field to deliver customer benefits. Now what I'd like to do is summarize a little bit of where we started and where we're headed. First, we talked about the office as a whole new way to work and how it presents a new set of applications called information-centric applications. And here the focus is on enabling people to be more productive with their computers by focusing on the data and information that they're working with. Secondly, we talked about how these applications could then be tied together into powerful business solutions so that people can take the individual applications and create whole new applications. And third, in the process of doing that creation, Visual Basic for applications in the office will dramatically speed the process of creating custom applications. And now what I'd like to do is turn it over to York as we continue with our program. York?
Thanks, Robbie. Now as we continue on with the program, we want to talk about how you can use some of the technologies that you've just heard described in the Microsoft Office in combination with powerful other technologies that allow you to extend the reach of the office and the client in general throughout the enterprise to enable people to work better together. We've already seen how these information-centric applications can improve end users' ability to deal with information. What we want to do now is focus on the kind of infrastructure that's necessary to allow people to work together not only with applications on a single machine, but applications and people across many machines and workstations within the enterprise. And to do that, we need to provide a standards-based infrastructure that allows you to use these technologies across all the systems that you have within your environment. And we also have to make sure that the platform is flexible enough so that as you change and migrate your enterprise and look to new systems to produce new functionality for you, you have the capability to adapt the platform on the client side in order to accomplish that. So what we've done at Microsoft to provide for that is to build an infrastructure or a strategy we have called WOSA, or the Windows Open Services Architecture. And very simply stated, the purpose of WOSA is to provide a standard way from within Windows to get out to the enterprise and the services that the enterprise provides. Things like data access, for example, as well as messaging as two key components. So that regardless of whether you have an SNA system, a digital-based environment, perhaps you have some Unix-based systems, some LAN environments out there, it shouldn't matter to the end user and the developer of the application how they get out to those systems. There should be a standard way, and that's what we provided within Windows with the WOSA architecture. Now specifically, we want to focus in on messaging as a key area for allowing people to work together in new ways. Messaging, as you know, provides a good enterprise-wide mechanism for people working together outside of the boundaries of traditional geographic and departmental types of structures. And so now it becomes very easy to provide for an electronic messaging environment that breaks down those barriers and allows people to work together better in a work group sense. So with that then, what we want to show you is how the Microsoft Office can take advantage of this messaging infrastructure, regardless of how it's implemented within your organization, in order to allow people to work better together. And in this demonstration, we're going to take a look at 3 separate people that need to work together in a collaborative way on a document. We're going to start out with a vice president who's creating a sales report and needs to get information from 2 other people within the organization. In particular, the public relations department, and then finally a sales manager also that needs to contribute to this report. This is going to be a 3-person demonstration. We'll start with the first piece of it now. We'll start with the vice president. And the vice president in this instance needs to get information, data, from a database that's located on an AS400 and bring that down onto Excel, which is running on a Windows for Workgroups workstation. And for that portion of the demonstration, I'm going to turn it back over to Brett. Brett?
Thank you, York. Traditionally, it's been difficult to get at data in your enterprise. And not only be able to get at data, but also then be able to analyze it. So what I'll show you now is how we're using Microsoft Excel 5.0 and a tool that ships with every box of the Microsoft Office called Microsoft Query. It allows us to get at data much easier. And once we get it, we'll use a tool called the pivot table. And so that now allows us to analyze this data much easier. So let's go ahead and take a look at the screen, and we'll show you how we're going to access Microsoft Query. It's very easy to do so. We'll go here. What we're first presented with is a Microsoft Query front end. Now, Microsoft Query uses ODBC, or the Open Database Connectivity Standard, that allows us to get at data that sits in a number of different locations. For instance, local databases, server databases, and even mainframe databases. For instance, then Microsoft Access or FoxPro databases or server applications such as SQL Server or Oracle. And now, a very exciting new tool that actually is under beta development with Wall Data Corporation is an ODBC driver that allows me to access IBM DRDA databases that sits up on a mainframe or a mini. So now, just as easy as it is for me to get at data that sits on a, say, DB2 up on a mainframe, I could get that data just as easy as I would Microsoft Access. So we've made this very simple so you don't have to worry about where your data is or how you get to it. So let's go ahead and look at how we're going to access this data on the AS400. We have a driver here that says Encore Sales Database. And as Vice President of Sales, I need to get at this data that sits up on this table. So we'll go ahead and we'll use this data. Now we're presented with a list of tables for which we can choose Encore Sales. Now this is a query tool, so I can now query this information very easily. Now, if you're familiar with Microsoft Access, you might recognize this environment. It's a query by example environment where I can easily now choose the data that I'd like and drop that down into the window you see below. So just that easy, I'm able to get at the data that I'm looking for. And now I can easily return this then back to Microsoft Excel. So let's go ahead and do that. And now just like that, we were able to get this data into Microsoft Excel. So we're trying to help, Microsoft is working very hard to try to help people get at this data very easily. And hopefully through a tool like Microsoft Query, we're allowing people to do that much easier now. But now that we have the data, let's be able to analyze this a little bit easier. And to do that, we're going to use the query, or we're going to use the pivot table in order to do that. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we access the pivot table. To do that, we use a pivot table wizard that easily gets us through the creation of this table. Now, Microsoft Excel is recognizing where the data source is for us automatically. And then it presents me with a diagram that asks me how I want to view this data. So for instance, I might be interested in looking at last month's sales. Okay? Notice it's recognizing across the top here the different categories as part of this data. And I'd say I want to view then product categories broken out then by region. So some of my last month's sales by product category and region. And we'll also pick up a couple of other ones that we'll use here as well. And just like that, we're finished. And I can go ahead and also format this data. And now we have a pivot table. Now, as a Vice President of Sales, I can now look at this data and analyze it much easier. For instance, before, with that long stream of data, it was very difficult for me to pick out a data that sat inside the table, for instance, piano sales. Well, now looking at the tool here, I can very easily find product sales for pianos very easily. So we choose piano here. Now we see a view of piano sales broken out by region. I can even break that out by country very easily now as well. So this tool allows me then to take data and move it around or pivot it so that I can look at it and analyze it in the ways that I need to. So for the next part of the demonstration, let's go ahead and we'll throw it back to York. York?
Thanks, Brett. Now what we'd like to do in this portion of the demonstration is have Brett continue on to actually build a report with the data that he's gathered. And to do that, he'll show you some technologies that we've already touched on a little bit in more detail, and that is the OLE 2.0 automation capabilities in combination with Visual Basic for Applications. What you'll see happen is that from within Excel, we'll drive Word to automatically create the report. We'll also drive the third-party application, Visio's Shapeware, that you saw us use earlier to generate a graphic or a map in this case. And then finally, that graphic will be incorporated back into the completed report or document. So with that, Brett, would you like to show us that, please?
What we're going to see next is how Visual Basic for Applications will drive Microsoft Word and Visio to create our custom report. Now we're going to be doing all of this from Excel. And notice as we go through each step of the way how we're using Excel to command each of these applications to do the particular things that we want to in automating this process. So let's go ahead and take a look at the demo. We have a button up here on the toolbar that will access this macro for us. Now again, this macro is much like the one that we witnessed earlier with an APPC demo. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and hit the button here. The first thing Excel is going to command Word to do is pull up a template document as you see on your screens. Next, it'll insert some text and graphics that we're looking for. And what you see happening now is it start driving Visio. Now again, because Visio and Word both support OLE automation, and OLE 2 in that matter, what we're able to do then is command Visio in this case to pull up a map of Europe and color code each country depending on how that country did sales revenue-wise over the last month. Now Excel is telling Visio to copy that graphic and put it right into Word. Okay? What we've shown you here then, as you see on your screen, we come up at the end of the report. What we've shown you here is how easy it is that using Visual Basic for applications now we can automate this process. In fact, this process would have taken usually a lot longer, and it used to be a manual type of a process. But now we can automate that through this interface. So the next thing we want to do now that we have this report, we want to be able to distribute this throughout our company much easier. But we have a couple of sections that we want to fill in first. So what we're going to do, as York mentioned, is send this report to a couple of individuals within our company here that can add in the additional pieces that we need to. So because the Microsoft Word, and for that matter, the Microsoft Office application supports MAPI, and therefore Microsoft Mail, what I can do is directly route this report from within Word. So what I'll do is I'll come up to the File menu, and I'll come down to a routing slip, where I'm actually asked to log on, just like we were in Microsoft Mail. And what it will present me with is what's known as a routing slip, where I can then choose the route that I want this document to go. What I'll do here is I'll go ahead and bring up the appropriate individuals, in this case, the Public Relations Department and the Sales Manager. Go ahead and hit the OK button. Now what we'll do is type in a subject here. And this was November sales, so the last month over November. We'll type in to please add your information and say thanks. Okay, now what I'm able to do is route this document. What we can do now is, once we've now routed this document will arrive in the mailbox of, in this case, the Public Relations Department first, where they can open up this mail on the other end, add the information they need to, and continue on. So what we can see now is actually on your screens as the mail item arrives in our PR department's mailbox. What that person then will be able to do is edit it just like they were looking at the document itself. And from there, as York will point out here in a moment, we'll be able to route this document on then to the third individual who insert the information that they need to as well.
So now for the next portion of the demonstration, we're going to focus on, in this case, the Public Relations Department and the problem there. The problem in the Public Relations area is that we have a set of documents, in this case paper-based documents in the form of press releases, that need to be incorporated in this overall report. So what we're going to show you in this demonstration is the ability to incorporate through the Watermark document imaging package, which supports, of course, OLE 2 in this case, be able to incorporate those images into the overall report. And to do that for us now, I'd like to introduce Michelle McNeil to take us through that part of the demo. Michelle?
Thanks, York. Once we're in our Public Relations Department, we take newspaper articles and directly scan them into our system electronically. And so I would like to show you how we do that. Let's go ahead and we'll start now with our mail message. And so we'll go back to the computer. And as you can see, we have the mail message from the Vice President. We'll open it, and below you see an icon. This icon represents the Word document. It's as an embedded object. So as I double-clicked on it, we're opening the object, and you can see the entire monthly report. As we scroll down, we see the place for recent press releases. This is what the Vice President would like us to add. So what I have here is a newspaper, and I'm going to take this newspaper, and I'm going to scan it in electronically. And the package that I'm going to use to do that is called Watermark. So let's go ahead and look at the package. We have a built-in scanning capability within Watermark. So we'll select the scan option, and I'll place the newspaper in my handheld scanner and select to scan. One of the benefits of Watermark is that it's a very cost-effective solution. You can purchase the package as a shrink-wrap package and without any development, and for a reasonable amount of money you can have document and imaging capabilities on all of your Windows desktops. Also, the package of Watermark supports OLE 2.0, and what that means is tight integration with your desktop. Since the Microsoft Office supports OLE 2.0 and Watermark does, they're able to share information seamlessly. And so we can take this image from within Watermark and place it into any of the Office products. And that's exactly what I'll show you. Now we've seen our newspaper is finished scanning, and so we'll go back to our computer. And we have the electronic image in front of us. We'd like to draw attention to our article, and you can also make annotations within Watermark as well to important aspects. But the most important part is that you're able to share the information once it's electronic. So I'll minimize my screen so you can see both at the same time. On the top half of the screen we have Watermark with the newspaper, and below we have Microsoft Word with our monthly sales report. We'll take a copy of the newspaper from Watermark and drag and drop it into Microsoft Word. This is possible due to the cross-application drag and drop capability of OLE 2.0. And now we have the entire newspaper print within our monthly report. At this point, I'd like to forward it on to my counterpart in the sales department. I'll use Microsoft Word's built-in routing capabilities. And as you can see, Word automatically remembers the original routing slip as specified by the Vice President. And it's already said and stated that it should be sent to the sales manager. So all I need to do is press OK, and then now my document in this revised edition will be sent on to the sales department. And so for this next segment of the demonstration, I'd like to go ahead and turn it back over to York. York?
So that completes the process of including these document images into our report. Now we're going to go to the third person in this scenario and look at what the regional sales manager needs to do to include some customer leads into this document before completing it and putting it onto an electronic bulletin board. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tom Jaffe to take you through this portion of the demonstration. Tom?
Thanks, York. In the sales department, what we're going to do here is to, from within the report that we're generating, access a database on a remote server and import some sales leads into our report. And we're going to do that through Microsoft Query that's incorporated into the Office. So as you can see here, the mail message has arrived with our Word icon. And we can double-click to open it up. And here's our report. As we scroll down, we can see that there's the open space for our customer leads. We're going to access a remote database, once again, through that remote, through the MS Query tool. It's now going out and getting the data, and as you can see, we have a list of different sources where we can access the information. In this case, we're going to get the information off of an Alpha AXP computer that's running SQL Server for NT. And we're going to add our customer leads table. And just as you saw earlier, it's the exact same interface that we accessed from Microsoft Excel. In fact, it's the same application. So we can drag it down. And now what we have are all of our sales leads from around the world. In this case, we're specifically interested in only those sales leads from the country of Britain. So we can run a little query here by choosing country and typing in Britain. We now have the information we need, so we can return to Microsoft Word. Now, MS Query in this case is built into Microsoft Word, and as a result, it is aware of Word's auto-format capabilities for the table. So we can auto-format the table, choosing a nice colorful one. And when we say OK, it will insert the information back into our Word document. OK, so we now have the information we need, and we've completed the report. The next step would be to publish the report out to those people who need to read it. One way that we could do this is to simply send the mail, as you've seen before, so that it arrives in everybody's inbox. Perhaps a better way to do this would be to publish it into a bulletin board service. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So I'll save this document, close it out. And now we can return back to Microsoft Mail. We'll update the document here in our inbox. And now I'm going to pull up a third-party application called Conference Plus from a company called Mesa. This is a bulletin board system that has been designed to be integrated in with Microsoft Mail. And as you can see here, there are a number of conferences that we can choose from. In this case, we would like to publish the sales report into our sales data conference. To do that, we can very simply drag the information from the inbox and drop it into our sales data conference. Now that this information is in the Mesa bulletin board service, Mesa supports a process called replication. And what that means is that the information can automatically be replicated across the enterprise so that regardless of where people are sitting, they can just connect to this Mesa bulletin board system and access the information. So with that, I'll turn it back to York.
Thanks, Tom. Hopefully that shows you now, as we've completed this demonstration, some of the power that's available with this open architecture that we provided within Windows that allows not only our own applications to get out and access enterprise data and messaging, but also through the inclusion of standard interfaces allows, as you've seen, third-party applications to be included within this infrastructure for powerful features and infrastructures like, in this case, an electronic bulletin board system and document imaging. So now, to kind of close off this discussion of the Office, we've talked about a lot of technologies and a lot of products. What we'd like to do is to wrap it up with what we think will be a very interesting case study to you, where a retail operation, in this case a grocery store, Goodwin Supermarkets in Southern California, has implemented an entire point-of-sale and accounting system built around the Microsoft Office and the back-end systems that we're going to be describing shortly after the break. And with that, we'd like you to enjoy this next short case study of Goodwin.
The supermarket industry, especially in Southern California, extreme competition, and the profit in a supermarket is, in our area, is less than a penny on a dollar. So, needless to say, you really have to know the business. We have found that the customers really appreciate the system much more than we thought they would. For instance, at the checkout stands, they are actually seeing a regular PC monitor. They can see their items being run across, and there's a running total on the side, so they can see where they stand. The other thing is it lists the person's name on the monitor, the date for when you're signing a check, so you can see the check. So the customer awareness has been real good. Without the solution provider, we couldn't have accomplished it. The tools that we wanted to use were all Microsoft. We didn't want to get into 2 or 3 vendors. We just wanted the best. And of course, we felt that was Microsoft, so the only way to do that would be to have someone from Microsoft do the programming. And they gave us a solution provider that helped with the point of sales.
Stanford Business Systems is a Microsoft solution channel provider specializing in the creation of custom business applications based on the client-server technology. Well, Microsoft Access is the front end in this point-of-sale system. It is the driving force from the front-end perspective.
The thing that I really find exciting about Access is, number one, how user-friendly it is, and the ability to develop a Windows application that has the graphical user interface in such a simple format that just about anybody can develop an application in it.
This point-of-sale system that is today operational on a multi-million-dollar organization was all developed from scratch under 8 months. This is unheard of. This is a complete point-of-sale system with complete integration into an accounting-based engine, all done under 8 months.
Of course, I come from a mainframe environment. To develop a system like this, you're looking at a 2 to 3 year development time to develop a system like this. We've done it in 7 months.
When you look at the screens, you'll see the Office applications, which we use: Word, Excel, of course, Access, and Publisher.
This is a real exciting part of the application, is how integrated it is with Word, with Excel. Anyone down in the back office at any point in time can pull up and see what the sales figures are for the day. Then all this is tied into Excel. We've got some graphs built in to the spreadsheet, so that as sales go up, the graphs adjust to the current sales data. And that really is probably revolutionary in this industry.
Using Microsoft's object linking and embedding technology and dynamic data exchange, there's a full linking capability between Access front end into Excel, where we take the financial data and then do further analysis in Excel.
in our industry 20,000 to 30,000 items in a supermarket. Each item, the customers want awareness of what that price is. So you have a label. That has to match what's downstairs or in the back office in the server. In a Windows environment, Access, again, we have a laptop, an NEC, Windows pin base, that allows us to wand the item on the shelf and bring up the price, and we can change it at that time. Also, we have a laptop printer that will print out the label to be able to change the price at that time. There are probably 50 to 60 vendors that drop off product at our store. When that vendor comes to drop off the product, the buyers are not around. So you have our store clerk receiving and you have their truck driver delivering. They're not sure what the prices are supposed to be. They're just checking to make sure that they've got the amount of product. We can wand the product and it can tell you what the price is. When you're all done with the order, you tally it up and it prints out an invoice, and this is what we should be paying. So we found this will probably save us 25% of the net that comes from the purchases.
We do probably about 20,000 transactions a day, and given that kind of volume, we needed a more durable and sizable database, so we went to the Microsoft SQL Server.
The IBM MCR systems, they were able to give you 13 weeks information. That would be on movement. With the Microsoft being in the NT environment in SQL Server, on a personal computer now, not a mainframe, we're able to keep 2 years information, which is a tremendous benefit to us in making decisions. The savings from the system when it was complete was beyond our expectation. 20% savings in net, an increase in net by 20% savings by adding up all the efficiencies in improvement in our time, accuracy, putting the two systems together, the point of sales plus the accounting, which is essential to our business. So that equals 100% satisfaction.
Okay, 3645 is your total. There's a great example of a customer that's not only implemented a great solution for them based on the Microsoft Solutions platform, but also had the help of a solution provider to make sure that that got implemented in the right way and very quickly. So that recaps really the first half of the presentation. We hope it's been valuable to you, and we're going to go to a 20-minute break now. After the break, we'll come back and take a look at the server side of these applications, how you can build a cost-effective infrastructure in the enterprise for supporting these new types of applications. I'd like to encourage you to fill out the feedback forms that you've been given to give us feedback on how the event's going for you. And with that, we'll see you after the break.
Discover how you can manage and administer your computer enterprise. Plus, Microsoft's Steve Ballmer will be here to answer your questions coming up in the second half of the Microsoft Business Solutions Telecast. A copy of today's program is available on VHS for $39 US. To order, give us a call at the numbers listed on the screen. If you're interested in receiving a copy of today's Business Solutions Telecast, please give us a call at 800-423-8883 in North America. And international orders may call 206-635-6460. Cost of this 3-hour presentation on VHS is $39 US. The Microsoft Business Solutions Telecast continues. From the Executive Briefing Center at the Microsoft campus, here again is York Bauer.
Welcome back from the break. We hope it's been an adequate break for you. We'd also like to welcome back all of our 600 plus sites around the world for the second half of the Business Solutions Telecast, where we'll talk about the client-server infrastructure, the back-end systems that are necessary to make these kind of applications that we've been talking about not only possible, but very cost-effective and practical. So with that, let's talk about the kinds of operating systems that are required for making this possible. We've already spent a fair amount of time with Windows for Workgroups, but I just wanted to recap very briefly what we've been able to accomplish in this latest release. First, we have enhanced networking support. We've really worked hard to make sure that we have excellent network support regardless of the environment, and specifically in the case of Novell, now have full ODI driver support. In addition, we've worked to increase the performance of networking so that we now have fully 32-bit networking components in the Windows for Workgroups product, such that regardless of the type of network access you're doing, you're getting the full performance of 32-bit code with that. In addition, we have centralized configuration. One of the key points that customers had for us in terms of feedback on the product was that we provide a way for the IT organization to provide centralized control in terms of security and administration of these systems. And we have that now in Windows for Workgroups 3.11, such that a centralized administrator can restrict the type of access that an end user might have, including requiring authentication against an enterprise server that's controlled by the IT organization. Finally, we have new mobile capabilities. We've already shown you the remote access services component of Windows for Workgroups in an earlier demonstration, but I'd also like to point out that we have complete fax support now within the product, such that an end user now has faxing capability right from their workstation and can also receive faxes that come in just as a regular mail item within the mail client that's included within Windows for Workgroups. Now let's shift gears and talk about Windows NT, which is of course our high-end operating system that really is intended to provide the mission-critical support that you would have in high-end applications. There are two versions of Windows NT. The first is the client operating system, Windows NT 3.1 itself. Let me take you very briefly through a recap of the operating system. It's a fully 32-bit operating system that offers preemptive multitasking and really makes use of the kind of 486 Pentium and RISC-based systems that are in place today. It's also fully portable in that regard and provides security that allows you to, with confidence, deploy Windows NT into mission-critical environments where security of data and applications is critical to your end users and your overall computing environment. Additionally, Windows NT offers tremendous reliability. Built-in reliability, for example, in the file system, as well as some of the other fault-tolerant aspects that are available with the system, things like RAID 5 support, disk mirroring and duplexing, the high-end features that you would need to feel comfortable deploying mission-critical data and applications as you would today onto a mini or mainframe system are now available within Windows NT. Additionally, we have built-in networking, and we'll be talking a little bit more about this in detail in just a moment. But suffice it to say that we've worked very hard to make Windows NT attach to all the computing environments from a networking perspective that you may have in your environment. Finally, we offer symmetric multiprocessing support, which we believe is very important in terms of looking forward to these kinds of high-end systems. We also have an enterprise server version of Windows NT, and that would be Windows NT Advanced Server. This product adds now the capabilities to Windows NT that are required for deploying a server in an enterprise. And let me take you through those. The first is centralized administration. With Windows NT Advanced Server, you can now administer all of the servers within an entire enterprise centrally from a given server. This adds tremendous flexibility for you as you look to deploy these client-server solutions around the enterprise, but still be able to maintain centralized administration of them if you choose to. We also offer Macintosh client support, so that if you do have Macintoshes deployed in your environment, you can allow those to attach just as you would DOS, Windows, and Windows NT stations to that same NT server. We also offer the Remote Access Services server-side component. This allows, as we showed earlier, for Windows for Workgroups, DOS, and other Windows NT client stations to dial in over an ordinary phone line, X.25 line, or ISDN line to get access to the server, and that's up to 64 simultaneous users. Finally, again, I'll make the symmetric multiprocessing support point. This is very important on the server as you look to deploy mission-critical client-server applications and allow those to grow in terms of capacity to really meet your needs. Now, let's talk for a moment about Windows NT as a file and print server. One of the key areas that we think Windows NT excels at is the ability to provide very cost-effective performance. So while the technology is great, we hope it offers you an excellent business opportunity as well. As you can see on this slide, a comparison of Windows NT against Novell shows that we have in the same, if you're spending the same $20,000 in the case of Novell, you're getting a 100 user license and running the product on a 16 megabyte 486 processor. Windows NT, on the other hand, for that same amount of money, gives you an unlimited user license, which up in Windows NT means up to 1,000 users on a 64 megabyte dual Pentium server, which provides not only better performance, but an excellent platform for other applications to be run on. So let's talk about the kinds of applications beyond file and print share that are important for a server. Microsoft has ported the SQL Server product to Windows NT, such that we now have a mission-critical database application that runs on this platform and takes full advantage of all the capabilities of Windows NT. For example, we're able now, through the scalability and the support for symmetric multiprocessing, to offer truly mainframe-class performance in a database. And you'll be hearing from some customers in the form of case studies momentarily that are deploying these kinds of systems in that fashion and seeing those levels of performance available to them very cost-effectively. Second, SQL Server is very tightly integrated, as are the other server applications, with Windows NT. So you now have a common set of administration tools, and as we'll show you in just a moment, the ability to control not only the operating system, but the server applications in the very same way. Finally, there's a great set of visual tools, both on the client side as well as on the server side for administration purposes for manipulating this new database. So with that, what we'd like to do is show you the kinds of cost benefit that are available with this platform. The slide that you see here shows a comparison of SQL Server running on a variety of Windows NT platforms compared to several other industry standard types of platforms. For example, Sun, Unix, other flavors of Unix, and the VAX VMS platform that you see to the right. Those are the green bars showing the transaction per second performance of these platforms. You'll note that Windows NT Advanced Server running on a dual processor Pentium machine on the very left equals almost the same performance as the high-end VAX system running VMS on the very right. Now behind that, what you see is a purple scale indicating the relative cost of providing that kind of transaction performance. And with that, you'll note that Windows NT is able to deliver 226 transactions per second at a cost of approximately $440 per transaction per second. That compares, in the case of the VAX VMS product, running at an equal or similar level of transaction performance at almost $13,000 per transaction per second. So we're very excited about the kind of cost effectiveness that we can provide to you in a mission-critical database platform compared to the types of systems that you may have in place and may be looking to purchase. Now we'd like to show you in demonstration form some of the things we've just been talking about, in particular the scalability that's possible with Windows NT. What we have is, as you can see in the diagram here, a Windows NT SQL Server running up on a multiprocessing server machine, in this case sequence WinServer 3000 with 6 processors. We're going to simulate a transaction load with a variety of Windows for Workgroups clients down here at the bottom of the diagram, and then we'll monitor that system remotely from another Windows NT system up here to get a feel for the kind of transaction load that it can handle and how Windows NT is able to scale that load across the available processors. And for that demonstration, I'm going to bring Brett back up to take us through it. Brett?
Thank you, York. So what we're going to be running here is a performance monitor. Now this is a utility that comes in every package of Windows NT. And we're going to be measuring the performance of a WinServer by Sequent, and we're going to be measuring the transaction throughput on that server. So let's go ahead and take a look at the performance monitor and get an idea of what we're going to be looking at here. As you notice, there are 7 parameters, 6 of which are going to correspond to the load on each of the processors on the WinServer. And then the last one is the transactions per second. What we're going to do then is run an application that will simulate transaction throughput on SQL Server. So to do that, we're going to run an application on the machine next to me here. Let me go ahead and go over and start it. This application is going to simulate 9 intelligent workstations. And you'll see what we should expect to see on each of the processors in the performance monitor is an even distribution across them. And then we'll also see a spike, of course, in transaction throughput. Let's start this application. What you see here now is actually bank transactions occurring, deposits, withdrawals, and so on. And now let's move back to our performance monitor. And as you see on your screen, Windows NT is distributing each of the threads or the transactions themselves across all the available processors. And again, in this case, there are 6. And you also see the spike right about in here of the transactions per second. Now, of course, this is a 6-processor machine. However, if this were a 16-processor or a 30-processor, SQL Server and Windows NT would take advantage of all available processors. So hopefully what this has shown you is the scalability that you can achieve with mission-critical applications such as this. So with that, we'll throw it back to York. York?
So hopefully this shows you the kind of power and price performance that's available when you combine Windows NT with the types of multiprocessor systems that are available on the market today that provide all the way up to and including entry-level mainframe class performance. But we also recognize with Windows NT that it's important to provide connectivity to the rest of the enterprise. And for that reason, we provide with Windows NT connectivity to the important environments that you might have. For example, NetWare, Unix-based systems, and the hosts that you might have in place, particularly those from the SNA environment. Now what we'd like to do, though, is talk specifically about NetWare. And we think that it's important because of Novell's 60% market share in this particular area that we provide excellent connectivity. And we've done that in Windows NT. We offer file and print connectivity. And we'll talk about how we accomplish that in a moment. But we also think that Windows NT can play an excellent role as an application server in a NetWare environment. Now, the way we've achieved that is by providing the IPX protocol as well as redirector support for Windows NT. IPX is native in the product so that you can very easily provide the ability to include a Windows NT server as an application server running, for example, our SQL Server product, into a NetWare environment and still use IPX as your native protocol. Also, in combination with Novell, as well as our own technology that we're developing internally, we're going to provide you 2 alternatives for getting a redirector, one from Novell, one from Microsoft, and both those products are today in beta. Finally, we also offer tremendous support from a client side, as we showed you in the last slide. So the ability to combine a broad range of clients from DOS, Windows, Windows NT, and Macintosh into these systems is very important. Now let's take a look at a customer that successfully integrated Windows NT into this type of environment, a NetWare environment, as I've just described. I've got a case study available for you now, about a 5-minute video case study of Paragon Trade Brands, which is the largest private label diaper manufacturer in the United States. So let's take a look at that now.
As you know, in the last year, Paragon is a brand new company in February, and we used to be a division of Weyerhaeuser. And this has presented a great challenge for us to look at our IS structure and how we're going to do things as an independent group, and given us the opportunity to do some of the things that we want to do very quickly. And going against P&G, Kimberly-Clark, and the regional brands, we needed to go to market quicker and not take as much time in our structure of doing business. So the whole thing was just to look and setting up platforms that we could help the business grow very quickly. We measure a diaper off the line, and it can be up to 100 different points that we collect this data and measure it. And we used to have this kludge that took about 14 days before the plants got any information on what was going on. Today, at the end of the shift, we can give them that information. So it says that we can tell them when they're out of sync in making a diaper, and we can get that back in very quickly.
A new phase of this application uses Visual Basic as a front end and NT SQL Server on the back end to collect this quality data automatically off the diaper lines, and it moves that data up to the corporate SQL Server. There, the quality assurance department can report on and analyze the data in a much shorter time schedule. What used to take over a week will now take less than a day for them to get reports out on the system. The project started about March with system design and prototyping. We've had one project lead and a project designer and one coder who codes with Visual Basic and NoSQL Server. The prototype started in April, late April, early May, and we've been working on the prototype for about 4 to 5 months, and we now have a final product. A few of the reasons we decided to go with SQL Server for NT was, one most important is scalability. If we decide that we need another processor, we need more power, we can go to a multiprocessor system or even move up to a RISC system. Another reason is the much improved administration in the SQL Server for NT as compared to the administration for either OS/2 SQL Server. It takes much less than half the time to do the same thing with this new product. We're a Novell network shop, and at the onset I wasn't sure on how well Windows NT would integrate into that. I was pleasantly surprised when we went and installed the final product of NT that it was very easily integrated into our current situation, and it was very easy to move our data from an OS/2 SQL Server to the NT SQL Server.
We don't want to be locked in to any platform. If we got somebody that's going to be on a Unix base, we're going to be able to support that. And the driver that's going to be out there, and I fully believe it, will be the NT. To allow me to connect 400s or Unix-based systems or a Sun base or something else that I may need out there, and I don't have to worry about saying I got to put another operating system out there. I've got my primary access method. When you go from a very large corporation, which is over $9 billion and has lots of deep pockets, to an organization that's 500 million, you have to really look at saying, if I'm going to spend the dollar, what am I going to get for it? And so you really sit down and look at your cost justifications a whole different way, and what's your return on investment. But in looking at changing platforms and going with the client-server-based technologies, we've been able to achieve those return on investments that we've promised people. In fact, some of those are far better than what we're promised, and that's a nice competitive edge to have, because we can give cost reductions back to the business that we can then pass on to our customers and not hurt our bottom line, which is a great way of doing business.
Another important environment for many of our customers, as I've already mentioned, is the Unix environment. So we've worked very hard in this case to provide excellent support for Unix within Windows NT. First, we needed to ensure the ability to exchange files and information between Windows NT and Unix-based systems, and we have facilities like, for example, the entire suite of TCP/IP utilities that are included in the box with Windows NT. Also, companies like Sun have developed NFS support for Windows NT and made that available. We also want to make sure you could access the applications that you may already have in place on Unix-based systems, and for that reason we, for example, have Telnet support within the product. And additionally, through third parties, there's X-Server support available as well. But perhaps the most important point is the ability to include Windows NT in a Unix-based distributed computing environment. And so for that reason, we provided RPC support within the product to accomplish that. And that's, of course, an important direction if you're following the OSF direction for providing a distributed computing environment. And as an example of this, we'd like to take a look at a case study now of Sequent Computer Systems and how they've implemented Windows NT into their Unix environment.
We're about an 11-year-old company. We're a worldwide company providing open systems computer solutions to customers to automate their business. Increasingly, we're seeing customers want to re-engineer their business processes more horizontally than the typical older vertical kinds of organization. And this has led to a real opportunity for client-server computing. Very few of us these days have completely green fields. There's always a set of processes that are already in place that are going to have value. So another thing that was very attractive about both the client-server architecture and the set of tools available from Microsoft around NT Advanced Server was the ability to interface with already existing automation. What this has meant to Sequent is a need to integrate to our existing rich automation capabilities, and those are centered around the Unix operating systems and the sort of tools that are available in the Unix environment today.
One of our key challenges was to integrate this with our existing corporate networking, which was a LAN, WAN, TCP/IP-based network that existed on a worldwide basis for Sequent. And into that environment, we integrated NTAS servers along with our existing Unix servers for both administrative purposes and application purposes. Another key challenge in our overall project was to integrate this with our existing mail system. We have seen lots of advantage in the Microsoft mail environment with a graphical user interface and the ability to include attachments. However, we have a worldwide Unix-based mail system, and so we needed to integrate the two. So we brought in Microsoft Mail, a post office that integrated with our Unix system, and that allowed us to gracefully migrate our users from the Unix mail environment into the Microsoft Mail environment over time. Additionally, Microsoft SQL Server gave us a strategic database that we could use in workgroup applications. For example, our WinCentral telesales operation.
In our telesales operation, we handle over 1,500 calls per day and capture prospect and customer data in Huxley, our Windows-based sales automation system. Huxley runs on SQL Server for NT on a Sequent Win server. Today, we have over 20,000 companies and 45,000 contacts in this database. We have sales and service reps in the field who have notebook PCs running Windows for workgroups. Using remote access services, they can dial into the database and get the information they need whenever they need it.
Huxley is a workgroup contact management system we use here at Sequent. We use it in the WinCentral direct telesales operation as well as other workgroups here in the company, in particular workgroups that are contact intensive. This whole application is built around the Microsoft Solution Platform and relies on building blocks like Word 6, Excel, Mail, Schedule Plus, and of course SQL Server as a strategic platform for the whole application. For example, letters created in Word 6.0 are inserted into a client or prospect record. Sales quotes created in Excel are inserted again into the record itself for storage in SQL Server. We use the object linking and embedding technology to accomplish this. We have worked with CTR Business Systems, a local solution provider here in Portland, to build an events registration module of this environment in Visual Basic. We register prospects and customers around the world into our different marketing events. And then we use Word 6.0 and the query capabilities of this application to create lists, attendee lists for these events, and then we route these lists around the world via email.
We found that the NTAS operating system was surprisingly robust almost from the beginning. We started earnestly moving people in our organization to the NT environment running on Sequent's NT Win servers about 6 months ago. Already we have about 20% of the corporation using this rich environment. It's not been without some rough spots in the road, but in my experience the NTAS operating system is as robust as any I've seen this early in its life. The Microsoft vision of enterprise computing using NTAS as the basis for the server technology, particularly is enabled by the power of symmetric multiprocessing, which is a capability brought together with Sequent and Microsoft as an extremely powerful enterprise approach to client server. And we're absolutely convinced that an enterprise vision is the one that's right for us.
So there's an example of how an organization has integrated Windows NT into their environment. And what we'd like to do now is transition from that into the area of administration, because obviously, as Sequent has found, it's important to provide a strong administration model so you can control all of these systems, and particularly the Windows NT system, in your environment. Now, one thing I'd like to point out again, as I talked about at the beginning of the presentation today, is that this is a particularly important area for cost savings. As you can see in the diagram on the screen, it's especially important because we find from this Gartner Group study that 61% of the cost of a business solution comes in the cost of rolling that solution out, administering and maintaining that solution over its lifetime. So with Windows NT, we've worked very hard to provide a comprehensive set of tools that allows for centralized administration of many Windows NT servers in a particular environment. And I'd like to show you a few of those tools right now in a demonstration. The machine that I'm going to be working on is running Windows NT Advanced Server 3.1. And I'm going to show you several of the tools that are available for doing end-user administration and also for the administration of server applications. In this case, our SNA gateway product called SNA Server. So as we take a look at the User Manager utility on Windows NT, and I'll bring that up here, we see that first off, it's a fully graphical tool. So now I no longer have to deal with command line syntax and some of the common problems that exist today on server-based systems. I can use a graphical tool. Let me add a user, for example, show you how easy this is. I'll add this new user. In this case, we'll add Bill Gates here as a user on this system. And now to assign Bill rights on the system, I simply add him to a group. So for example, I can add him to the executive group simply by dragging and dropping that group over into the groups that he's a member of. And by clicking OK and then adding, I've established Bill Gates now as a user on this system. So obviously it becomes very easy now with these types of tools to be able to administer the users themselves for file and print share and basic access to the system. But perhaps more important is the fact that we provided this same facility now to any of the server applications running on the system. So you can administer access to those server applications in exactly the same way. So let me show you that now with the SNA Server. I'll bring up the SNA Server administration tool now. And you can see that here, and it allows us, of course, to control the connectivity, etc., and also the users down here on the bottom of the screen that can have access to the SNA Server. Now watch how easy it is for me to now add Bill Gates as a user of the SNA Server for host access. I can simply click down here in Users and Groups, say I want to add a new user, and I'm shown exactly the same list of users in exactly the same form as you just saw in the User Manager. So as I scroll down here, I now see Bill Gates. I can add him, and now he has access to the SNA Server. Likewise, we've implemented easy drag and drop facilities for doing further administration. So if I want to give Bill Gates a mainframe session to use, I simply take one of the LUs in this pool and drag it onto his name, and now Bill has that mainframe access. So the important point here is that a network administrator now only needs to understand one model of administration, regardless of the applications that they may have to deal with and administer on a given system. Now, we also recognize that while it's important to provide good systems and facilities within Windows NT itself for administration, that there's a lot more in terms of administration that we need to deal with within the enterprise. You as customers today have in place existing enterprise management systems like NetView and SNMP, for example. So we felt it very important within Windows NT to integrate with those systems. We have full SNMP and NetView capabilities within the product. And in particular now, I'd like to demonstrate for you the NetView capabilities that we'll be talking about. Now, on the slide that you see before you, what we'll do is connect to the mainframe, and we have done this actually, with an SNA server running on the machine that I was just on to our ES9000 mainframe. And what we'll do from a Windows for Workgroups client system through 3270 emulation is issue NetView commands to that SNA server from the mainframe. So now let me shift over to the other station here where I have Windows for Workgroups 3.11, and I'm running the Rumba emulation software that you saw me use earlier. Now you'll see that I'm at a logon banner to the mainframe. I'll go ahead and log on now. I get into the NetView command control facility, which allows me to issue commands now against the SNA server. And as you can see, we're getting logged on to NetView here. And in just a moment, I'll be ready to issue a command. Here we are. Now what I want to show you is the ability to issue commands from within NetView just as I would if I was in Windows NT natively. For example, what I can do is I can start the SQL Server Management tool remotely. So I'll go ahead and type start and the SQL Manager utility. Hit the Enter key, and what you'll see in just a moment is that the SQL Server Management facility is brought up remotely on the other system. Now, perhaps more importantly, I can actually control these server applications remotely. So for example, I can say that I want to stop SQL Server running on this system. And as you can see, as I type that command, you see that that has gone to stopped on the SNA server machine on the right of your screen. So again, it becomes very, very important now to be able to include Windows NT in these enterprise management systems. And we hope that through this demonstration, we've shown you that that's not only possible, but very, very easy to do. Now, while we've talked a lot about administration, there are some other new facets that are very important in the area of administration in terms of these new client-server applications. You have more and more software now that's out on the PCs in your environment and the server systems that's becoming more and more distributed. So we need to provide you with better tools now for administering that software that's out on those client systems. For that reason, Microsoft is proud and pleased to be in development on, and actually now in beta testing on, a new product we have called Hermes. Hermes provides the ability to do on an enterprise-wide basis inventorying of hardware and software, software distribution, and even remote administration of individual workstations. So let me take you through Hermes now by showing you the administrator's Hermes console, which allows for an entire view of the enterprise from within this single application. So switching over to the screen now, we can see that up here in the upper left-hand corner, we have an entire view of the inventory of all the systems within our enterprise, and that includes not only server machines, but also individual workstations. So as I click on a particular site, like in Seattle, for example, we see that we have 2 machines that are clients and a server machine as well. Now, I'll point out for a moment that this inventory information is gathered entirely automatically on behalf of the end user. So the end user nor the administrator need to type in this kind of information. It's rolled up automatically and stored in a SQL Server database centrally, allowing for querying, as I'll show you in a moment. So looking then at a specific machine, let's take a look at the engineering workstation, which is the Windows for Workgroups machine that we've been using in today's demonstration. And I'll double click on that, and I'm shown now the properties for that specific machine. And as you can see, I can see the type of machine, the type of processor that's installed, the operating system components and versions, etc. I can also collect files from the system. In this case, for example, we have the autoexec and config.sys collected. But perhaps one of the most exciting things is the ability to provide for remote administration for help desk kinds of functions. So now watch, as I click on the help desk function, I'm brought up to a list of remote facilities, things that I can do remotely to this system. And I'll select remote control. Now what we have is a situation where on my Windows NT system, as the administrator now, I see the full remote interface for the other system. So I have complete keyboard, screen, and mouse control over that end user system, and I can help them through problems, etc., show them new things, and so on. So for example, I can remotely start in this instance the system editor on both systems, and as you can see, I'm starting it actually on their system, but viewing it also on mine, and I can take a look at specific elements within the system and make corrections for them, and so on. So that's an important and exciting capability of Hermes. But we also have the ability to do querying against the inventory that's a part of the system. So for example here, I have a query tool in the lower right that allows me to build queries. For example, here's a query that looks for Windows for Workgroups 3.11 workstations that have 10 megabytes of memory or more. And these are very easy to create, of course. To execute the query, I can simply drag it onto the network, and I'm showing all the machines that match that criteria. Now, I'll also point out that because this is a SQL Server database, and while we've provided a tool within Hermes to allow this kind of querying to take place, the fact is you could use literally any tool, like for example Access or any other front-end tool to gather this information and provide reporting against it. Now finally, I want to point out the software distribution elements within Hermes, and that is up here in the upper right. You have the ability to create what's called a package. And in that package, you place the software to be distributed. Now that software does not necessarily mean an application itself. It could also mean literally anything that resides on a hard disk. So a sales report, a memo that needs to go to someone on a routine basis, and all of this can be done automatically and repeated for the administrator automatically on a preset interval. Hermes also works across a wide variety of network topologies. So regardless of whether you're in a LAN environment over literally any Windows NT supported protocol, or if you're in a wide area environment with an SNA system, then certainly Hermes can use that as well. And finally, using the remote access services capability, can dial into remote sites and do distribution that way as well. The product enjoys excellent third-party support, and we're very pleased now to be working with a variety of other vendors to provide Hermes as an integral component of broader and larger enterprise management systems. So with that, I'm going to step back to the podium and we'll take a look at what's coming up. So we're drawing towards the close of our presentation today, and I'd like to remind you that in about 5 minutes, we'll be ready to take your questions live with Steve Ballmer. So I'd encourage you to call in now with the numbers on your screen. But what we hope you've taken away from the presentation today is that customers can be very successful in employing the technologies that are embodied by the Microsoft Solutions platform in building business solutions in their environment. But perhaps even more importantly, that Microsoft is aggressively partnering with the rest of the industry and with our solution providers to make sure that you have the help and the expertise necessary to successfully deploy these applications quickly and cost effectively. In fact, to drive that point home, we've got one final case study, a case study of Platinum Software, where they'll discuss the technologies, again, that we've put in place today, and specifically their relationship with Microsoft as a solution provider.
Platinum Software Corporation's mission is to be a technological leader in the area of client-server business critical applications. And we feel that the NT operating system with SQL Server on board makes a very viable platform for large corporates who are looking to right-size their applications to distributed business critical information systems. We see a large number of our client base very interested in the NT platform, and that would be up significantly from this time last year. Probably 30 to 50% of our client base is interested in NT as a server-based platform. We're seeing some significant performance benefits from the new versions of NT running on the DEC Alpha chip, for example, and that makes it a very competitive environment with the Unix platform.
The relationship between Platinum Software and Microsoft is a very synergistic one, and I think that's very important. Microsoft providing the technology foundation for organizations like Platinum Software to build on and to deliver mission-critical application, financial applications in our particular case. When you combine Platinum Software Corporation's SQL to Platinum applications and technologies like Digital's AXP platform, what we're really able to deliver is enterprise-wide mission-critical applications that had traditionally been only in the realm of the mainframe and host-based computing environment.
Most of our clients are involved in heterogeneous network environments, and NT as a server operating system is especially good at being able to be installed in these heterogeneous network environments. So whether we're TCP/IP or SPX or any other network for that matter that we see out there consistently, it makes it easy for us to install the NT server and be up and operating in a fairly short period of time. I think there's always some degree of pressure on the price performance issues of implementing systems like our Platinum applications, our SQL to Platinum applications in particular. The clear indication is that a payback of a year or less is something that many of our customers are requiring, and that providing them the applications running on Windows NT is a way to get there. The one area that is different in this environment is the total system solution approach that didn't exist in the early days of the packaged software side. The business process re-engineering requirements that are involved, the conversion of data from the legacy applications, the implementation procedures, the fine-tuning of the implementations, all of those aspects of an installation need to be addressed appropriately, and the professionals brought in to make sure that it goes smoothly.
Platinum Software Corporation is a solution provider in the Microsoft program, and we've been able to achieve some early benefits in participating in the program. Historically, I would suggest that Microsoft large account sales reps, for example, are probably not real comfortable in talking to CEOs and CFOs of organizations about financial systems. The same can be held true with Platinum Software Corporation, where traditionally our role has not been in in discussing client-server technologies and operating system environments with IS directors of major corporate organizations. One of the interesting opportunities that presents itself in today's marketplace is our ability to jointly go into an account and work with the Microsoft account executive to deliver the right technology and the right application solution to a customer going through a right sizing.
I think from our perspective, the way in which Microsoft has provided us direction as well as input has been second to none, and we're very, very pleased with that.
So hopefully that shows you another example of a solution provider partner with Microsoft that not only is interested in and implementing our technology, but also enjoys a good business relationship with Microsoft. And now joining me here today is Steve Ballmer, our Executive Vice President of Sales and Support for Microsoft. And we're almost ready to take your questions with the phone numbers that are shown on the screen. But before we do that, Steve has some comments for us about our solution provider program and how to make it easier to do business with Microsoft. So welcome, Steve.
Thanks, York. Well, it's my great pleasure to have a chance to chat with you all today and to take some of your questions. I hope it's been an exciting time for you and that we've been able to get across some useful information. We are at a period in the computing industry that I think is particularly vibrant and alive. The kinds of things that are happening are really happening very quickly. The move to client-server computing, the use of applications as building blocks, reusable code libraries effectively to help you build your own custom applications. That phenomenon is accelerating. And the move in which many third-party companies are entering the computer services business, delivering a wide range of value-added services, training, systems integration, custom development, vertical application development, horizontal application development, and many others. We refer to these companies as a whole as solution providers. And we think that their role in the computing infrastructure will increase dramatically over the course of the next several years. We think that many companies around the world in this day and age are looking to outsource important information technology functions, to purchase those services, those specialized services in a given field, in a given technology, or in a given industry from these very many third parties. You've had a chance to hear from a number of the people that we have started to work with who are solution providers building around the Microsoft Solutions platform. And we hope over the course of time you'll hear more from many of our partners as they begin projects working with you to implement business solutions that improve your productivity. Now, our commitment to these solution providers, and frankly, our commitment to those of you who want to do these kinds of functions internally in your own information technology departments, needs to extend beyond anything we've ever done before. We find it increasingly important that we provide you a wide range of information that lets you really harness our technologies. And so we've put a lot of investment in developing products like the Microsoft Developer Network CD, the Microsoft Technical Network CD, that literally provide you a continual refresh of the information and sets of knowledge that you and our solution providers will need to effectively take advantage of these platforms. We're putting effort in developing training courses and training materials that third parties can use to give courses so that our solution provider partners and those of you who choose to do this inside information technology departments can become trained and educated and certified through the Microsoft Certified Professional Program in the technologies that we're describing today. We're trying to dramatically move forward in the support area to be able to provide quick answers and quick resolutions of issues and problems that you may come up as you work with these technologies and implement business solutions around them. These are very important things to have happen. We need to invest not only, of course, in the partners, not only in you as our customers, but also in the support materials the training, the education and certification to make you effective. Now, for those of you who are actual end user customers implementing business solutions, it's important that the products be there. It's important that the partners, the solution providers be there. It's important that that all be well supported. But at the end of the day, we also think it's important that we make it easier and easier for you to acquire, license our products, and to do business with us. We've introduced in this last year what we call the Microsoft Select program, in which we've tried to dramatically simplify the licensing terms and conditions for large volume purchasers of our products around the world. We will continue to enhance this and improve it based upon your suggestions. And for those of you in smaller organizations, you will see us implement somewhat similar programs that will scale down and helpfully, effectively target your size organizations also through new Select offerings. Well, with that as a little bit of a business backdrop, perhaps we could have an opportunity to take some of your questions. Be great.
Well, thanks, Steve. I think that pretty well summarizes where we're headed. In fact, we do have our first question queued up. We have a caller today from London actually coming to us not only live, but in fact with video teleconference. I believe the caller is there. Can we hear the question from London, please?
Steve, hi. This is for you. Peter Knook here from London. What is Microsoft's perception in the future for multimedia applications, and do Microsoft see these being a strong emphasis towards business use?
Steve, why don't you go ahead and address that?
Great. Good to see you, Peter. Thanks for that call. Now, we certainly see multimedia occupying an increasingly important role throughout the computing fabric. The word multimedia gets used sometimes differently by different people, but I think it has two important aspects. One aspect is the notion of rich integration of information, where you're mixing charts and text and video in a rich way to put together exactly the information that somebody wants when they want it. The second thing, of course, that multimedia means isn't just the integration of the information, but many people use that to refer to video, sound, and audio. And while we have developed a number of applications that use those technologies, particularly targeted at the home, we increasingly are driving to bring in the right sets of multimedia technologies to Windows so that Windows really can be a platform that helps target and implement multimedia applications. My last trip actually to London, I saw a very fascinating ISDN-based video conferencing system being demonstrated by one of our partners in the UK, British Telecom. And I think you'll see people do more and more of that kind of business multimedia on top of the Windows platform.
Okay, Steve, I think it's pretty neat we're able to see that question live. Our next caller is from New York City. I believe the caller's on the line. Why don't you go ahead with your question in New York?
Thanks. Steve, I've seen quite a bit so far about the interoperability between the Office apps and also some third-party applications as well. The reality here for me is that along with some Microsoft Mail users, I certainly have some Lotus Notes users as well. I'd be interested in hearing what Microsoft is doing to ensure interoperability with those Office apps and my Notes users.
Yeah, Steve, we showed a number of applications today. Can you talk a little bit about how we're positioning that integration?
Yeah. Well, certainly one of the key things that we want to do as a company is evolve Windows and the Windows NT Server products as great platforms for the development of group-enabled applications. Applications where people can share and route and in very rich ways collaborate in the production of and discussion of important business information. We do have some customers who have taken preliminary steps in that direction with the Lotus Notes product, and we have committed to support Lotus Notes in our applications. What that means concretely is we will give the ability inside our applications over the course of the next several months for our applications to read and write objects directly from the so-called Notes database. Now, over time, what we're talking with Lotus about is including those kinds of capabilities directly in Windows and the Windows servers through a set of open APIs which our applications could support and which Lotus could support with Notes.
Well, Steve, our next call is another international call, a caller from Paris this time regarding solution providers that you talked about. So, Paris, if you're on the line, why don't you go ahead with your question?
Yes, my question is back to the solution provider program. Several of our guests would like to know what is the Microsoft strategy regarding the solution providers program, or what we call the Programme Solution in French, in Europe and particularly in France, and what are the advantages for large accounts working with the solution providers?
Great. Yeah, I'd be glad to comment. I tried to touch on this just briefly in my remarks, but let me try to really bring it alive. Many companies today, actual users, do have large, medium, or small size information technology departments. There's increased pressures to stay current with technology. There's increased pressures to implement more applications, to learn new technologies, to do many things, perhaps even to downsize from time to time the size of the groups. We think what this will mean, that coupled with the fact that the traditional model of the mainframe computing environment is changing a little bit, because in the mainframe world it was typically the supplier of the mainframe who delivered computer services along with the hardware and software. In the personal computer world, we see our customers increasingly looking for options outside their own organizations where they can go to somebody and say, look, please help me plan and implement my electronic mail system. Please help me develop the custom Salesforce automation tool that'll help my people be more productive. Please come on in and train my people on the development of applications using Microsoft Office and Visual Basic. Microsoft as a company is 15,000 people today. But with 15,000 or even 30,000 people, we couldn't possibly keep pace ourselves with the full range of services that customers are asking for. And so we felt that it was imperative to reach out to the many, many thousands, literally, of independent companies around the world and train them, equip them, and empower them to be an alternative that our customers, large and small, can take advantage of for these types of specific business solution services in their markets. So whether it's the solution providers in the US or the Programme Solutions in France, we think this is an incredibly important initiative.
Thanks, Steve. I think that complements nicely the kinds of things we showed today, as well as examples of how you might go about that. Our next call is from Columbia, South Carolina. Is the caller on the line?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead with your question for Steve.
Steve, more and more my clients are looking for solutions which allow them to remotely access their enterprise-wide information via modem from a laptop computer in the field. You touched briefly during the presentation on the remote access to NT and Windows for Workgroup remote access. Can you give us an idea of what kind of performance the user can expect in that kind of environment from the typical laptop via modem from a hotel room, for instance?
Yeah, Steve, we were particularly focusing on the mainframe side of things for mainframe access remotely. So you want to correct that?
That's a great question, and I, in two senses, am probably a good person to answer that. Number one, I do work for Microsoft, and number two, you described my life. I travel a very high percentage of the time. I carry a laptop. I dial in from a hotel room, and I literally get all of my schedule information, all of my electronic mail, all of the faxes that I receive come to me electronically, typically dialed in over 9600 baud line from a hotel room to our servers here in Redmond. Now, what you'll find, I think, in general is it really depends upon the application what kind of performance that you can expect to see. If you just do the math, transferring 4 or 5 megabyte files will take certainly some number of minutes across the 9600 baud link. But I find I'm able, and I receive perhaps 100 to 150 electronic mail messages a day, I can pick up my mail in 10 or 15 minutes over a 9600 baud link, and that's a very fast and effective process. We are seeing more and more of our customers, not so much for the traveling worker, but for many cases for their employees, finding ways to make ISDN solutions work. And certainly what we find is the added performance of ISDN actually makes it very reasonable to even do things like remote software distribution and installation to a laptop over an ISDN link. My machine, for perspective, is a Windows NT laptop system, 20 megabytes of memory, and I run NT because I carry confidential information and like the security.
Yeah, just to add to that, Steve, too, you know, in the demonstration that we showed that we're running over a 9600 baud modem for that demonstration, we see compression that's built into the remote access services running at about 50%, so that helps with performance also.
Right.
Our next question's another video teleconferencing call from London, so why don't we go ahead and put the caller on. Go ahead with your question from London, please.
Steve, hi, this is Peter Knook again. I know it's early in the morning for you, but we've got another question for you. What is Microsoft's strategy and policy for interoperability between OLE2 and Corba from OMG?
Steve, we touched a lot on OLE2 in the presentation, and we didn't really talk about that, so can you clarify that a bit for us?
Sure. For those of you who may not have gotten the details or seen the announcement yet, we did participate last week, we did an announcement last week with Digital, in which we announced that Digital would work with us to take important components of OLE2, import those to non-Windows platforms, specifically the digital Unix platforms and other Unix platforms, to provide, with the goal being to provide a level of integration cross-platform so that people could build applications that could talk to Corba services in the Unix side and nonetheless act as OLE servers for Microsoft OLE based applications. Not just Microsoft applications, but any Windows-based OLE application. So we are committed to achieving interoperability across the network. Of course, the native Windows object structure is the so-called OLE, or Object Linking and Embedding Infrastructure, but through partnerships like the one with Digital, we certainly will provide services that let you interoperate and connect with Corba services.
Great, Steve. We have another international caller on the line. The call is from Munich this time. Munich, are you on the line? And if so, go ahead with your question for Steve.
Hello, my name is Oliver Dajek. I work for the Systems Integration Division of Munich, Nixdorf here in Munich. Our customers traditionally place large value and importance on the areas of open system standardization, especially OSS, OMG, etc., etc. And we work in those institutions. We see Microsoft standing on the sidelines and not actively participating. I'm wondering whether Microsoft will be more present and more cooperative in the future?
Yeah, Steve, we touched on it briefly about how we're trying to position ourselves specifically with Windows NT in terms of integrating with those environments, but maybe you can clarify that a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, we are participants in the bodies that you mentioned, the OSF group, the XOpen group, the OMG group. And from time to time, I do get the feedback, like the feedback from the gentleman from Munich, that says people wish Microsoft would become more active in those discussions. It is our goal to respect and participate in those standards in the appropriate way. And that is for us where appropriate and relevant and possible based upon the history of Windows and the compatibility constraints that implies, to be standards compatible. And certainly you see in the work that we've done in our RPC, where we are DCE compatible in the RPC mechanism, some of the work that we've done in the languages area, where we've converged on the important standards, that we are committed, where possible, to be 100% standards compatible. There are plenty of areas, though, where either because we have compatibility constraints from the past or we have innovative ideas from the future that we're sharing and brainstorming, of course, with partners around the world through our own open process of accumulating feedback early in the design stage of new operating system technologies from Microsoft, where we will not be able to be standards compatible. In those areas, what we are doing is working very hard through partnerships like the one that I discussed with Digital and others to make sure we are interoperable with the standards. And our participation in the standards body does have those two aspects. It allows us to be compatible where that's possible and to focus in on interoperability where that's the next best thing. We are trying to get creative on how to get even more involved in those standards bodies and to push this interoperability even faster, because we have had a lot of feedback from customers, I'm sure like the gentleman from Siemens, that has been pushing us, shall we say, aggressively in this direction, and hopefully we'll continue to be more creative and clever in this regard.
All right, Steve, our next call is actually from a university viewer. Penn State University is calling in with a question today. Why don't you go ahead with your question for Steve?
Hello, my name is Walt Beatty, and I'm from Penn State University. And my question deals with Windows for Everywhere. I would like to know how you plan to implement Microsoft Office on the Macintosh and on Unix platforms, and if that implementation will bring along ODBC, MAPI, and TAPI, and does this mean that custom-generated applications will be deployable on those systems also?
Okay, good question. Well, our strategy in this area has three pieces. First, of course, we will develop as great and exciting applications as we possibly can for the Windows platform, and we plan to provide those products in native Macintosh form, first on 68,000 Macs, but of course also on the PowerPC Macs as quickly as possible. Where Apple has technologies that are similar to those in Windows, we will not fight the Apple standards. We will use the Apple standards. In areas where Windows has gone beyond the Macintosh, we will actually take core parts of Windows and implement them on the Macintosh platform. Our strategy for Unix is perhaps even more straightforward, and perhaps is why the caller refers to it as our Windows for Everywhere strategy. But we are working with a number of companies, but particularly with Insignia Corporation, to license them. We have licensed them the entire Windows source code so that they can actually bring all of Windows, the entire Windows environment, over to sit in the Unix platform, so that you can literally, or you should, as we get this work done with Insignia, literally be able to take any Windows diskette and run it as is, or any Windows program and run it as is in the Unix environment. And that certainly is our objective. What that will do for software developers is cut down the time it takes them to port not only to one Unix, but perhaps to have to worry about 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 different flavors of Unix. And I think from a customer perspective, the other thing that it does, it ensures you that the user interface that you're learning and training your people on in the Windows and Macintosh, the applications are implemented exactly compatibly also in the Unix environment. So we're working very hard with Insignia, licensing them the code. Now, Sun separately has gone off and built a thing called Wabi. We offered to license them Windows source code for that. They refused. We have not seen Wabi ourselves. I can't tell you whether it's good or bad, whether it was implemented in a way that violates or doesn't violate our intellectual property rights, but it's a clone, and it does not use the Windows code. We don't fight at all the idea that Windows applications should run on Windows on Unix. We think that's great. We think the right way to do that is to build off of the Windows source code, and that's why we're working with Insignia.
Yeah, great, Steve. And just to clarify, too, for the viewer, some of the Visual Basic for Applications code that we showed earlier is, of course, portable with Visual Basic for Applications to the Office applications running on the Macintosh. Well, Steve, we're drawing to the end of the question and answer session. We have time for one more question now.
Great.
The question comes again from Europe, from Rome, Italy. I believe the caller's online. Can you go ahead with your question? Yes, hello, Rome. Go ahead.
Io am Paolo Davoli, CEO of Inseal, a solution provider company. I do represent STET, my controlling shareholder, and the controlling company of the telecommunication carriers in Italy. Is Microsoft going to be or not to be a major player in the field of multimedia? And what kind of relation do you foresee between the complementary players, telecommunication, information technology, and television? Is it going to be competition, alliances, or just technical interfaces and standards?
That sounds like a good last question. Steve, you want to?
Yeah, no, great. Let me take a shot at that, and I hope I can help. In this area of multimedia, I think there are 4 primary businesses. Actually, more than that. There's 5 or 6 primary businesses, and let me help characterize them. There is a business building operating systems or platforms for multimedia applications. Those could be PCs, or they can evolve in the future to be part of your television set. It could evolve in the future to be other types of multimedia players, etc. We definitely do play today and are trying to make Windows a better platform for multimedia. And we're absolutely involved designing evolutions on our core Windows technology that are appropriate as the standard platform on those multimedia client configuration machines. Second business I'd point to is the business of doing servers, building the software that literally lets you distribute multimedia information to people. The system software, we don't see ourselves building the hardware, but we do see ourselves adding features to Windows NT Advanced Server so that it is a better and better server for video and other multimedia applications. Of course, somebody will build those server boxes, not Microsoft. Somebody will build the boxes on the client, not Microsoft. Somebody will put in the cabling or other connection between the servers and the clients and will run and operate those and charge for the delivery of multimedia information, not Microsoft. There's a third business, and that's the business of designing development tools that make it very easy for people to create multimedia applications. We absolutely see that as an outgrowth of our current development tools business, and we will certainly be a player in that sphere. The last business I'd point to is the business of actually creating multimedia applications. Today we do that ourselves, but in limited ways. We have a multimedia encyclopedia. We have a product that'll teach you everything you want to know about Stravinsky or Mozart. But this will be a huge, huge, huge market. There will be literally thousands of companies that create multimedia applications, either for CD distribution or with an online component where some of the information will be updated across these high bandwidth links. That's a huge market. Microsoft will be one of thousands of companies, and no one company creating multimedia applications will have a significant market share. That's the huge market of television programming and entertainment and information and education. And I think the greatest thing for all of the users will just be to see an explosion of the richness and quality and excitement level of those applications. And we all should play in that. So I hope that helps the caller understand where we fit in and where we don't fit in, and the broad set of opportunities that are available to all players in the information technology business, and hopefully then to our customers.
Well, that's great, Steve. And I think this event is to some extent an example of this kind of technology coming to fruition. You and I don't have to fly around the world. We can sit here and talk to people in Europe and around the world, take calls via video teleconference, so it's coming together for us. And in fact, on that note, that pretty much wraps up the Business Solutions Telecast. Now, there are a couple points that I'd like to make before we draw it to a complete close, and that is, this has been our first Business Solutions Telecast. We hope it's been valuable to you, but we certainly want to improve future events of this type. So please fill out the feedback forms, talk to your Microsoft representative, talk to the solution providers that are hosting the event, and give them feedback on how we can make this better. We'd also like to thank, again, the people who run the Astra satellite system in Europe for their participation today and allowing us in this convenient way to bring this information to such a large worldwide audience, over 25,000 people, especially over half of which were in Europe watching the event today. We also want to remind you of an event that's coming up both here in the United States and in Europe. It's called TechEd 94. So for those of you that have people in your organizations that you would want to help educate on how to build the types of solutions that you saw in our program today, and we would recommend that you go ahead and have them attend and call and register for TechEd 94, both in Europe, as I said, and here in the United States, and those numbers are on your screen for your reference. And finally, with that, Steve and I would like to wish everyone happy holidays. We hope the event's been useful to you, and we'll see you again in the near future. Thanks very much.
It's a great pleasure. Thanks to everybody, and thanks for all of your interest and support.
Thank you for your participation in today's Business Solutions Telecast. To order a VHS copy of this program, you may call 800-423-8883 in North America. And international orders should call 206-635-6460. Cost of the 3-hour presentation is $39 US. Once again, thank you from all of us at Microsoft.